Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is Aurora. I am so excited, pleased, happy, and yes, extra sunshiny, as lovely Aurelia here says in the comments. So extra sunshiny today because I'm returning in what I feel is a triumphant victory march from the experience of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna Retreat in Sedona. So here's the agenda for today. I have a wonderful curriculum set up that is part of the original curriculum, and this is level 1. Let me make sure I'm saying the right lesson. I always make sure I check my work. Lesson 9. Level 1, lesson 9. And this is all about the Flying Rainbow Lasagna and its relationship to DNA. So this lesson is like the basic black dress or simple tuxedo that is always in style, that I have no self-rants against in order to say that was true then but is not true now, and will be a very, very beautiful sharing of really the meat and potatoes of what this class is about. So you've been in class, we've been together in this semester for several months at this point, and now you're all either new people who are becoming experts or returning advanced students who are already experts, and we're going to dive and redelve into the concept of genetic behavior and how that relates to the shape that is known as the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Before I do that and jump into the curriculum of everything that is formal, also, I don't know if Tiki's going to bark because we just have postal delivery. She almost always BARKS, is just being a good dog. She was also super tired because we had 2 road trips, like going there and coming back that were like 10 hours. There you go. Now you can hear the barking. There we go. Turn off the sound filter. Sound filter's on. A long time in the car driving across deserts. And even though with the AC flowing, she got a little tired and a little knocked out. So Cheeky needed a couple of days to be able to sleep in her dog bed. And also total high praise. Everyone knows and loves Cheeky at this point. So high praise for her and all of her behavior, because she was so unbelievably sweet, loving, well-behaved, listened so beautifully to every time I told her we needed to get either in or out of the CAR, but also with every other thing that was an aspect of being in a new place. And she helped me a lot in the one-on-one sessions that I do with people, which I don't call them necessarily formal healings, but I do call them clearings and activations, as I've really leveled up in my own ability to use these IBA crystals and my gift of non-locality to go into people's bodies and clear out the either metabolic debris. You can tell I already need water. So I have my wonderful vintage of vitamin C water prepared for me here. Either clear out metabolites of the cells or actual physical debris or frequency debris, erroneous signals and their waveform aftermath that we do not want to have in the body. So I was able to do that wonderfully for the participants who were there. And I was so pleased to be able to do that in person. And point is, when Cheeky, which she knows when I'm doing that, she's very, very attentive. And she was a part of each one of those sessions. It's very different also. Like, there were other times when she was just like sitting peacefully in her dog bed or doing something else, but she knew when I was about to do that type of work. This is how advanced and amazing she is. And some people, she snuggled up with them. One lovely person was like holding her like a little baby. She's kind of smooshed over the side. Very, very beautiful. So high praise to Cheeky on everything that I experienced. Now let's do an energetic weather report and a recap of the experience in Sedona. So I chose that location. If you're not familiar with where it is a place in American Southwest in the desert of Arizona. And when I went to visit there last October on a different, smaller speaking gig, the energy there and the psychic open space was excellent, much better than where I was in California. And so in planning a Flying Rainbow Lasagna themed event, where what we want to do is be able to jump into the next highest dimension, to be able to reach, I don't have really spatial relationship words for this, but let's say up and outward, much more expansiveness. And where I was living in California, I had what I would describe as, a glass ceiling, a sense of a frequency limitation beyond which it was very, very difficult to transcend. It wasn't always here. Ojai used to be a very, very peaceful, beautiful place where I had great psychic weather. Okay, so this is all stuff that happened within the past 5 years. Coincident, the diminishment in psychic freedom, coincident with some other world events that you might all know about and have experienced yourself. And we don't always mention them directly here for a variety of reasons. But I chose Sedona so that way we would have the optimum flight conditions. And I also chose a place that had wide open blue sky up above it, no high tension power lines or any place in the area. And because these are all energy fields, basically. Sedona has minimal 5G and very few of these energy disruptors. And there's also a lot of people who are there with their own either organites, passive shielding, shungites, crystals, and also protective energy fields, scalar waves, devices of all sorts. And that plus the natural amplification of the stones, and you would call it the scalar energy or the mineral energy that the soil itself, the red soil itself of Sedona emits, all of that makes it a very energetically pure place in a world where there has been an enormous amount of frequency disruption, and it's been incredibly difficult to do this type of work. So I gathered there with about 10 wonderful Flying Rainbow Lasagna participants, many of whom are people who have been in my classes or have known me for years, in a place that I rented, a freestanding building with very few neighbors all around, in a place that is, again, outside of the city by a small distance, so that way there would be an energetic buffer zone so we could create and generate and sustain this Flying Rainbow Lasagna energy field. And I also gifted everyone with dance mats, like, you know, when I tilt the camera down and you can see I have my mat on the floor behind me, because the dance involves a lot of rolling and floor work, and you want to have like a nice thick puffy mat, not a little, no offense, a little wimpy yoga mat. It's just like 1/8 of an inch thick. So we all had our nice puffy mats to be able to do our dance upon, and a large, beautiful deck outside. And the event was a complete success on every level that it could possibly be, not only on the human secular levels of group dynamics and of making sure, you know, how do people interrelate with one another, even if you just had 10 people together in a house. I also have a wonderful organizer whose name is Landley. So much credit and recognition flows to her for the help that she did in finding space and doing so much organizational work and administrative work. And then also our private chef, Chef Dave, they both actually worked together to be able to feed all of us. So what the experience was very much like any kind of sporting event, like a marathon, a triathlon, something like that, where you're the athlete and you're going along and you've got the support crew that they're driving in the van next to you, and they might bring you like peanut butter, juice, water, electrolytes, whatever you need so you can keep going. So we had these two amazing people who worked their behinds off in order to make sure that we had all the physical nutrients to do what we do, because the lasagna dance is both an energetic and a spiritual and a consciousness-based movement and a very, very real physical athletic movement. And that's what I wanted to demonstrate and model or be a template for everyone there. So we would get up in the morning, as I do on every day that is an ideal day where I'm in charge of my schedule, and sun gaze as the sun is coming up. And that doesn't necessarily mean stare at the sun with your eyes. That's experts only, but it does mean to absorb the initial solar radiation, that level of consciousness food. And then I would put up a lasagna energy field, which is the beginning of a porthole or energy doorway experience. And then bring everyone out onto the deck on the large open space, and begin to bring everyone through a warm-up series of physical exercises, because I say lasagna is also like, it's not a light switch. It's not something where at 5 minutes from your commercial break between your television shows or something like that, or between various different work assignments, and they'd be like, okay, dance the lasagna for 5 minutes and then, you know, back to reality. It is much more of a lifestyle. I say that the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, when you do the actual dance, is the visible fruiting body of a larger mycelial network. Just like when you see a little mushroom pop up, it's actually part of a giant branching network that is underneath the surface. And the daily activities and the way you live your life is part of that. And music is a big part of that too. So I showed everyone how I usually get up in the morning, make some music, put on some music, and begin with that energy, because music is light, even though it is in the form of auditory signals. Music is most definitely light, and it feeds your light body. So everything that I did there, including the quality of the food and the music and the space, was to foster the light body and then get everybody kind of with a running jump to get into position and be prepared to do the lasagna. And I leveled up a lot as a dance teacher. I've been sharing the Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance through an informal groom, I said the wrong word, group Zoom, an informal group Zoom on Tuesday mornings for a couple of years now. And I also did some of that way back in 2019 before this larger world disruption. And it's very different for me teaching and sharing my dance, not in person. This was the first time that I've done it with a group where I could actually see and feel other people's bodies and energy fields, where I could actually show them a gesture or a movement of what I'm doing with my hand and with my body, and see how well they're picking up on it and integrating it into their own movement, and also to coordinate with everyone. And so I got to see whether I was being effective, and I got to feel the questions of other people who were asking me about what I'm doing and what we are experiencing. And then I also got to shift my language, my languaging and my description, and my really of the choreography, although it is a non-choreographed dance, but there are things that we do in unison. And so the best description that I have is, it is like dolphins swimming through the ocean, where there are the larger ocean waves, and then each dolphin is individual, an athlete responsible for itself. And then they do kind of jump through the waves in unison, but it is not like the Rockettes where it's like left foot, right foot, and everybody's coordinated in that way. There's an enormous amount of personal discretion and choice and artistry in how you express these different movements. And it was my great joy and pleasure to see the dancers grow as they became more confident in what this dance is, to see them put their own flavor and their own feeling into the movements that they do. Because we have like people who are hip hop influenced, people who are ecstatic dance influenced, and then also great pleasure to see people who would not even necessarily define themselves as dancers coming out of their comfort zone and trusting me to guide them through this type of experience, getting down on the floor with us and doing these movements, and having so much joy and freedom of expression. And then also everybody added their energy. This was not merely a pantomime. So although I love decorative dance, and that would be something like ballet, like when the ballerina is twirling around, it is very pretty. It is very decorative. It is not necessarily something that changes Earth on its axis or transforms the fabric of space-time, but it is beautiful, and I appreciate that. But I'm sometimes critical of ballet, the industry, the eating disorder, agitation that it can make, and also whatever bone growth and body disruption that it can make for the young people that are because you train from a very young age. So ballerinas, we love you, but ballet is not for everyone, all right? But Flying Rainbow Lasagna is for everyone, and had a wonderful group of dancers there. Mostly, I also have to praise their adventurous spirit, ability to rise to the occasion. I have so many wonderful anecdotes, but one in particular is our dance area was right next to a small grassy area, and we're ready in the morning to be able to do our dance. And at one point, the sprinkler system, the automated system, came on and started to soak our dance area. And this might sound like a very, very small battle to fight, like the battle of the sprinkler system, but it's a big deal. It's all symbolic, all right? And every single person who was there as part of this group sprang into action. Amazing group of people, because they all have what I would consider to be the helper personality, where instead of being passive or just being an experiencer or absorbing things, they all always looked for what can we do in order to help or assist, help others, organize, fix stuff. Like this is an important innate characteristic that I was so pleased to see. So we had one wonderful person who has an engineering background. It's like looking for the control panel to turn it off. And another lovely person came up and started to do that too. And then another person jumped up with a tarp, like found a waterproof tarp that was part of one of the outdoor coverings and covered over the sprinkler heads. And then we were able to do problem solving, team building, work to solve it, and then we're able to do our lasagna. It's a microcosmic fractal example of the type of things that we do in groups as we are doing lasagna, the spiritual world building, not exercise, but expression in the world. that there might be things that are not perfect or that have bumps in the road. There might be rough seas, quote unquote, or difficulties that we face. And instead of either like throwing up your hands in despair or complaining loudly or like rocking back and forth, going into depression or any kind of thing like that, a wonderful group of people who every time something like that came up, went into problem solving, went into activity, went into how can we keep this going? Because that is what we do. We are reciprocally sustaining one another with this energy field. And that is, again, where I come from as my Aurora Collective, a reciprocal group of dancers that were not standing on the surface of a planet or standing inside of what I jokingly call a clank metal spaceship in any way. Our group of frequency is what sustains us. And you might face adversity, which is the sprinkler system. And then how do you deal with that adversity? Not by saying, well, that's it, like just fall out of the sky, everything dies. No, not at all. But to go into problem solving and heroic response mode. And that is what we do. So amazing group of people, amazing experiences. We danced in the morning and we also danced in the evening, both concurrent with the sun and, you know, sun gazing, and put on lots of music. And then we also had wonderful excursions and time together and meals. But most importantly, so our final dance was on Thursday morning, and this was a 2-hour dance. Oh yeah, P.S. All of this was happening during the time that there was this enormous auroral display. And I know I didn't check in on social media that much and was very, very engaged with all of my activities and energetic responsibilities of what I was doing. I was very focused on my event. But people did bring to my attention that there were some kind of conversations that were going on social media, some skepticism. And so I want you to know that I truly recognize that people in this world not only come through with a lot of trauma from ancient concurrent Atlantis and other catastrophes, and also have been continually traumatized by propaganda, government diminishment of free will, and other illusions and outright lies and things that have attempted to harm your mind control of various different reasons. It's been hard for people to even consider and believe that something really good and amazing is going on in the sky. So just let me affirm to you, because I wrote this as a few quick notes on social media, but did not really get a chance to do a formal video because, again, I had a lot of energetic, focused responsibilities to be able to carry this event through. Those auroras, or that auroral display, that's me. That's not just my namesake. That's me, and is absolutely connected to my collective of otherworldly consciousness. It was a hugely important, positive sign of growth and opportunity, and a triumphant turning point in the battle for freedom that is happening on this planet that is not only regarding this time-space coordinates, but that affects your entire solar system, pretty much the fabric of time-space, all DNA everywhere, big stuff, big positive stuff. And it just goes to speak to how deep the trauma and skepticism here is, that even when you see like giant, beautiful rainbow colored lights, like if you're looking for a cosmic thumbs up and you see like giant, beautiful, colorful rainbow lights, like that's pretty much it. But people here have so much distrust that they're like, maybe this is the government doing this. Maybe this is something fake and technological. Maybe it's a sign of something bad or impending distress or catastrophe. Many people were afraid that there would be a Carrington event, which is named after something that happened in the 1800s. And there was a mass coronal ejection from the sun that distressed the very, very new electrical equipment that was coming forward in the late 1800s. And people were afraid, what if the grid gets fried? Will people all devolve immediately into barbarians? Will we all have to start dressing like Mad Max and get a crossbow? And I'm talking like metal chainmail bikinis and mohawks and, accessorizing with machetes. My answer is no. That is not what that is a sign of. And I hope that my words and the experience can bear out your belief. That's not what happened. Look at how you came through. That's not what happened. So maybe some people were afraid, or your community members were afraid. Assuage them and assuage yourself. That bad stuff didn't happen. And not only that, not just neutral, like, whew, we made it through that and everything is a status quo, because status quo is not so great. I'm sure you're aware of that in your life and in your world. But we triumphed, came through all of this, and we were able to change the fabric of time and space. This brings me to the final dance that we did, which was incredibly long, a marathon dance of 2 hours on Thursday morning, shortly before we checked out of the retreat center and were able to complete there. And Sedona really does have clear skies. It's unusual to see these things that I'm going to speak about, but we have them a lot in California. Some of them are, white persistent aerosols, but some of them are the fake or holographic aircraft. They're sky surveillance, but they're also frequency disruptors when you see them going through the sky. And they usually are cloaked non-terrestrial craft. They are not traditional fixed-wing aircraft. And they also have sometimes, like, I call it a dirty yellow aura around it. Like, if this is the actual craft that you see with your optical eyes, and then kind of around it, there's a little bit of a yellowish color, not just the pure blue sky. It almost looks like something is photoshopped badly onto the sky. And oftentimes they are perfectly silent, because they do not have a regular jet propulsion system, because that's not the type of craft that they are. And we had I want to say an onslaught, and I wanted to say an endless amount. We had a lot of those come forward while we're doing our dance. That's how you know, like, they're looking at us and seeing what's going on, and they would have liked to disrupt. But what I did was a lot of shielding. So it's like, oh, another Merkaba, another layer of shielding. And I would just call it out during the dance. We got more company, another shield, another shield, another shield. So in everything that we did, there's adversity, but we were able to come through it. And then what we were able to do in the cumulative dance, because when you do Flying Rainbow Lasagna, it is like making a painting. So you can consider, if this was an art project, you start off with a rough sketch of reality. Just like if I'm going to paint a painting that displays a formalism, not a mere abstraction, but if it's going to convey depth and a space, place, or an object, what I do is composition, which is where you kind of say, like, where's, grab a pencil. You start off with the sketch. You're like, it kind of looks like this. It kind of looks like this. Kind of looks like this. Stand back. Then you do an underpainting, put in general blocking in colors of light and dark. Then you start to add more details. Then you start to shift things around. So you don't immediately start off with the eyelashes on the edge of a person's eye or something like that. That's a detail. You wait until the very, very end when you even know where's the face going to be before you put on the highlights and the eyelashes and the tiny little details that really bring it to life. And so we danced in the similar fashion, starting with a rough sketch of reality. But we don't say when we dance, because it's a non-intellectual exercise. When you dance, it is an embodiment exercise. We did not say, like, now I'm dancing for this, or now I'm dancing for this. It is innate within you. Like, when you care about something and you do your dance, it comes forward in your gesture. It comes forward in your caring and your prioritization with your passions, what you are manifesting and what is important to you. And so we did have many beautiful conversations there in our communal meals about the things that are important to us, many of which are things that are unmentionable in this particular electronic forum. I'm sure that long-term viewers know exactly what I'm talking about. We were able to speak openly about them around the dinner table, and many people were able to say that they had felt like outcasts are the only sane member of their community, but that they were able to certainly find such great rapport with the other people at the retreat. It went without saying that we were all on the same page about the things that I call subcutaneous pollutions. And wait, let me get my magical piece of paper over here. This type of stuff, all right? And also other things that are often very, very difficult to refer to in polite society, both on this platform here and also in other places. Just gonna drink a little bit of my magical decaf coffee, hold on. Beautiful community building. That was part of my intention. Beautiful community building. I was able to build an energy field with everyone. People were able to establish what I think will become lifelong friendships and caring about one another. And then we did that dance. And in that dance, I think that we did a very nice chunk chunk is not a good word because I know what kind of connotations it brings up, but like an a section, a good section of what needed to be done in order to really have a turning point in the struggles against darkness that we have been through. And I used to say, oh, let's not use the language of war and all these different things. I have had to become much more of a warrior, and I've had to contextualize and frame this honestly, without mincing around on eggshells, as yes, very openly, a spiritual war, a spiritual battle, where it's not any kind of thing that there's a duality imbalance, light versus dark, and the tug of war and the yin and the yang. No, what we're really doing is battling against false light. You know, you've got the sacred light and sacred dark is what you're ignorant about. And ideally, you're doing real type of shadow work or inner work. What you're doing is exploring the aspects of yourself that you don't yet know about. Fantastic. But really, what is in this world that is so corrosive is false light. And that's not darkness, but it's lies. It's lies that come to us through technology. It comes to us through implanted technology that goes into the neurology. It comes to us from frequency assaults that are in the environment. And it comes to us from non-embodied, non-healthy, disruptive energy forms. I don't even really want to personify them as entities, but things that are like creatures or something like that that don't have bodies. And none of that stuff is just darkness. It's very evil, mostly false light, illusions, and that this stuff that's in the body creates a network of false light that speaks on the cellular level. So the sessions that I was able to do of clearing people out of the false light, false frequencies, even the infrastructure that carries false light was incredibly effective. So that way all of my dancers, like, their bodies are clear, their wings are expanded, and they're all able to do this very, very effectively. We consciously danced for the collective. When we do this flying rainbow lasagna dance, we do this in order to change and heal and rectify timelines. And so that means that you want to shift your own life because your body is your instrument. Like, how do you steer in time? You steer in time by using the DNA dance, and that's what the curriculum that I'm going to talk about from 10 years ago refers perfectly to this today. You steer with your DNA dance. And wait, I should gesture. Pretend another thing so I can gesture, because your DNA is constantly moving and twisting and arabesquing and whirling and twirling, and it knits itself together and splits itself apart. It does the most amazing things. And we'll talk all about that over the next couple of hours. Also, the way that your life touches upon other people's lives. And that includes houseplants, your cats, your dogs, loved ones, children, offspring, coworkers, and everything like that. And then also larger world events, which is big stuff, which might be, you know, political undercurrents, geopolitical undercurrents, and larger forms of social structure. All of that shifted from the work that we did. So it was work that was genuine work, not the type of silly make work of bureaucracy that many people are paid money for in this world, not the type of work that one wishes to escape in order to have a vacation. This was very real, focused, disciplined, spiritual work that was done for ourselves as individuals and for the collective. And we sailed through it magnificently with the auroras flying in the sky around us, with so much support and recognition from the sun and the stars and the world of pure light. So I bring this to you as not only like an energetic weather report, as a battle report. Huge turning point in the struggle for freedom on this planet, for the struggle for consciousness freedom in the world. And when you plant a seed, it doesn't just sprout immediately overnight, like Jack and the Beanstalk or something like that. Although that would be wonderful. Like if you woke up the next morning, it was like, everything is free, everything is fantastic. That would be great. Because then it would be like, no more effort, now smooth sailing, right? Still effort. But I have tons of positive things to report. And what I can tell you is it continues to unfold. It continues to grow. So huge triumph and turning point. You might not see immediate results, but I saw and felt some immediate results that I can share with you. And I'm certainly curious to hear your personal expressions of what you're experiencing. But please know, in the lives of the dancers, and in the lives of our communities, it can take a little bit of time to see and witness the change and the shift that you are literally in a different world. Because when we do this rolling dance, we roll through portals, we create these doorways in reality, and we go through into different and higher realities, and we generate these new realities and time structures. And then you're on the other side and you're like, you're not in the same place that you left. You didn't just move from point A to point B. You moved from point A through various different dimensions into a completely different, world state. And that is what we did with this whole entire planet. Okay. So now rewinding again to my sharing from, I went to Sedona way back in October. And when I drove back to California, I actually had a beautiful experience driving across the desert because there's minimal 5G and no power lines. And I'm super, super able to get like expansive with my psychic energy. And I did lots of good work. It's actually have been able to do a lot of healing for the collective on these very long drives. So that's what I do. I put on a playlist so I don't have to like fiddle with the radio, right? And then it's my music. And then, but sometimes I put on Steely Dan for my dog if she gets agitated. And then drive along and do all this, lasagna bopping while I'm in the car. But last time when I returned to the border of California, and if you're not familiar with, the United States and how things are laid out, it's kind of like, Arizona is over here to the east, and you have to go across the desert, and then you get to California. As soon as I got to California, it would always be like, okay, here's the high tension power lines. Everything feels like barbed wire. You go through the barbed wire fence, like energetically, this is why I do the air quotes, energetic barbed wire fence. And it's like, now you're in lockdown. And it feels very like, this is how much space you have above your head. And very difficult for me to keep that psychic energy high and flowing. So when I returned from the beautiful experience last October, it was kind of like, crash down. Not that much fun to come back to California. And even though things had changed and shifted incrementally there, because that was during one of the multiple eclipses that we've had. So that was the October 15th or 14th eclipse from last year. Came through, and my quality of life in California still didn't feel that great. But this time, this is my very, very positive assessment to you of the symptoms of reality. Patient is looking good because I came on a different road. This time I came through I-40, and I still came through lots of high tension power lines and went across the border of California. And I'm like, ready. And I'm like, we're okay. I keep going, keep bopping with the music. And I drove all the way back to Ojai, feeling as expansive and free as I felt when I was in Sedona. And even here in Ojai, I noticed a complete change and shift in the psychic energy field, that it felt like it felt 5 years ago, before this world disruption and before a lot of my own personal life disruption and many, many psychic attacks and personal turmoil that I've been through. It felt like that. Ojai felt calm, peaceful, divinely connected, and most importantly, that magical feeling. Magical as a feeling of like anything can happen. Good stuff. Good stuff. Like when you're able to envision and imagine, like, I wonder if this or this or this, like people usually have come to Ojai out of places like LA and other more urban areas to be able to have what they call like a reset or a relax or go to the spa or whatever it is in the world of commodification. But really what they're doing here is coming here for that spiritual energy of peace and expansiveness and possibility and imagination freedom. And we didn't have that for many years. And so living here felt like a lot better than other places. It definitely felt a lot better to me than San Diego. But it still felt like a place over the past 5 years here where it was just like a mundane place to live. Like a difference between a magical place and a mundane place. It's like the buildings look the same, but the feeling state is different. And when the magic is there, then it feels like, yeah, like in each day, anything can happen. Like you can build a business or meet a person or meet the love of your life or have some amazing thing happen, as opposed to merely like go to work, receive your money, pay your bills, come home, scrub the toilet. Like that is a very minimal level of existence. And so I felt that the magic had returned and it didn't go away. I've been back since Sunday and the high energy field continues. I continue with my efforts, and my efforts are efforts to continually clear out these two things from myself and from the collective, because I also learned that although this was a crucial turning point in the battle, the entire war is not won, or the entire war is not completed and over and triumphantly victorious yet. There's more work to do and more effort to do. However, I did feel that in the liberation of California and the psychic energy space here, now this work becomes so much more easy for me to be able to accomplish. So that is what I have to share in terms of a synopsis of the event that I just went through. And when I drove back on my wonderful long desert highway drives, I was able to envision and put wonderful creative energy into the next retreat events that I will be having. And it's already, the ball is already rolling, the momentum is already there to be able to do a near-term upcoming event in Ojai, in this place, this city where I live. It's not really a city; it's a small place, and to be able to share how, in however form it happens, my original artwork, because I don't really like to transport it because it's large, it's valuable. I don't want it to get scratched up or banged up or even bug poop on it or anything like that. So I don't like to display. I only like to display it indoors in places where it's climate controlled, and I don't want it to get cracked or chipped or anything like that. Every time you transport it, always a little bit hesitant to do so. So I'm not an artist. Like some artists don't mind and they just roll up their canvases or bring them around or whatever. But I'm like, no, very, very protective of my art pieces, and they take sometimes years to be able to produce. So I don't want them to have any tiny chips on them. I mean, like paint chips, not microchips, but none of that stuff either. So yes, some form of being able to invite people to see my physical artwork in person. And then what I'm also going to do, because I'm upgrading on every level, this previous retreat that I did, the dancers danced mostly to recorded music, things that I had already created as a musician in the net. And I did bring my music equipment with me, but I'm telling you, my speakers were small because I didn't bring out to my dance. I had a giant rental car that I had full of like dance mats for all the dancers. So I didn't have a lot of space to be able to bring like my speakers, my this, my that, all my musician's gear. So next upcoming retreat will contain lots of original Aurora spontaneously improvised music, because that's what I do almost every day that is possible, as a rapport between myself and my highest dimensional collective named Aurora. But those conversations that I record and produce into music, these really are like energetic back and forths of information and subtle frequencies that I can't wait to be able to create those for dancers in the moment and have those dancers dance. It's also going to be more instruction, because I leveled up as a teacher to be able to explain and describe what this dance is. So I will share this with you. The flying rainbow lasagna, when you do the dance, it is not that one is perceiving an external lasagna and envisioning like maybe I'm moving my leg around this curly area or moving my arm around this curly area. Dancers were wonderful in the questions that they asked and how I could clarify this. And I'm like, no, guys. You're inside of the lasagna energy field. In fact, you're emanating the lasagna energy field. If I hop off my treadmill, wait gently and be able to grab this. So this is your energy field that is shaped like a torus. And what we do in the dance is create a giant version of the torus energy field around ourselves intentionally. And then what I'm going to teach you about today in the curriculum, the formal intellectual teaching, is moving the singularity in various different fun and interesting patterns that creates the flying rainbow lasagna force field, and then being within that force field. And all of this is a way of, best way I can say it is turning time inside out. Language is failing. Just go with me. We'll talk about the little ant and about how the little ant gains an additional dimension of freedom and is able to do more. And the best analogy that I have is you are like a pavement making machine that makes the sidewalk. Like there's no sidewalk in front of you, but you're making the sidewalk with your own generative activities, and then you move forward into those event structures that you are generating and birthing through this experience. And I call it like a gushing, but gushing is not the right word, an effulgence a voluptuous coming forward. It's not just like a chugging machine, like puff, 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 when you see them paving the road outside, because it's always like dirty and smelly. So none of those words work effectively, but I hope that you're kind of getting my my mental feeling state, that it's a very, very joyful dance and very accurate dance. Someone else used as an example, it's just said, oh, it's like DDR, Dance Dance Revolution. And it is like that, except not just on that video game. You have a pad that your feet have to touch with different numbers on it. And you have to make your feet match up where you're going to go on these numbers in time to the music. It's much more than that, because it also involves your hands and your fingertips. So maybe it's a little bit more like one of those video games where there's like a sword or a lightsaber, and you have to kind of hit things, but it's not violent. We're not having to like hit stuff in the flying rainbow lasagna, but you got to hit connect with your objectives. There are time objectives. I don't have words for this. I have to figure out good words to be able to say this. There are patterns that are larger time currents that we need to integrate with in order to win the video game. Dance, Dance, Lasagna Revolution, right? And that means that you have to make your arms, your legs, your elbows, your head, your spine, your neurology, your mitochondria fit into these patterns. And these not necessarily your elbow, but let's say I'm going to name a bunch of body parts. These are light body parts: fascia, pineal gland, DNA, retina, optic nerve, neurology, myelin sheath, and of course, your aspect of self that are pure light, DNA. DNA is a bridge of light, and that's what we're going to get into the curriculum for today. These are all the physical manifestations of light body, or bridges of light from the purely physicality structure of your somatic cellular body into the non-physical world of purely ephemeral light, consciousness, and the concept of information and intelligence. So you need to make all of those body parts of your body container move in the correct patterns in order to integrate into the larger pattern. And when you do that, that is how you effectively triumph, reaching into greater levels of freedom and capacitation. That is the goal of lasagna. So it is not merely to sculpt a sculptural form with your intention that is external to you. You are the instrument, you are the container, you are the context, and then you are the artist moving the instrument within the container and the context that you're creating. That's what I mean when I say, like, you're paving the road, and then you're not just driving down the road, you are dancing down the road, and you continue to dance. And this is what my Aurora Collective is, that we literally do that across time and across vast distances of galactic expansiveness or time expansiveness. So before I go into the curriculum for today, I just want to open the floor to any questions or comments that people might have about this. And so upcoming retreat first one is going to be here in Ojai. And then I also have plans to do a subsequent one, probably also in the Sedona area at a larger venue where there could be maybe a couple of hundred people, a little bit larger, and something where there would be like in the one that I'm doing near home here, I'll use my artwork. We'll do energy body teachings. I'll teach people how to draw this. It will be semi-scholarly, but also involve a lot of music. And in the ones that are coming up, I'm going to do one that's like not a performance, as people know, a regular performance, but something that is much more based in just a lot of dance and music without a lot of me speaking, using my words like this. My voice still sounds a little tired because I talked for 4 days the way that I do in class here, which is wonderful. I have no qualms whatsoever, but I also learned if I want to sing for everyone in my very sacred way of singing, I have to save my voice a little bit. So I'm going to do that for like a larger experience where everyone is able to come, be lodged, listen to the music. The music will be very long, and it will be improvisational, and it will not be something that is already recorded. You understand? Like, you can already listen to my song catalog. I will not merely be reproducing something that I have recorded as part of my song catalog that you can find on Apple Music. but I will innovate new stuff in response to the moment, because that's what I do in my home almost every day, and to do it as a marathon event. So I would like to be able to have everyone get up in the morning, do sun gazing, do flying rainbow lasagna dance activities with me. We're going to float and fly like a bunch of, whatever, swimming dolphins through time. And then to move indoors where it's going to be cooler, because it will be probably very sunny outside, and go to where there's, I can keep my musical equipment, and then create these sonic landscapes that we're going to move through for many, many hours. And of course, to have all of our food taken care of. I can't say enough good things about the wonderful private chef that we have that created the event for us, and we'll see if it's possible for him to participate again, or if we're not in the same location, he might not be able to do it. But he's a wonderful person, so much recognition flows. So moving backwards, Steve says, "Great news, Aurora! So much to look forward to." Steve is one of our dancers. Steve, thank you for being a part of the event. And if you have anything that you'd like to share from your experience, I totally invite you to. And you could either share it now, or you could write it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, however much you feel comfortable, because I do put this on YouTube. So however much you feel comfortable sharing, and there's no pressure at all, just the opportunity. And up from there, Allison says, "Every moment is a divinely inspired, edited frame." Exactly, exactly. We're beginning to move into the level of experience where every moment is a perfectly sculpted artistic expression. And this is, again, very much outside of the mundane secular mindset, where people think like, oh, like I'm at the store doing boring stuff and I have to buy oranges, or whatever, I'm driving my car and I'm doing something boring and mundane. Can't wait to get home and do my creative stuff or do my meditation or whatever it is. But when you're really in alignment with these larger time currents, every moment becomes a profound expression of divine cosmic truth. I've told you this. You might even go through a portal, being in the grocery store where there's like a pile of oranges, a pyramid of oranges in the produce section, and you're just at that moment of reaching forward to choose which orange you're going to get and put in your grocery basket. And all of a sudden, like in one of my songs, like gong, going through a portal. And I don't encourage you like to get down on the ground and roll around to the produce aisle, because that might be illegal. All right. And want anybody to get arrested for illegal dancing. But you note the profundity of the moment. And you get that orange and you place it into your basket with the greatest level of grace that you possibly can, and then go forward to the checkout line. And if we're doing life right, every moment becomes like that. Steve says, "Beautiful energy, beautiful experience. Learning and loving the FRL is expansive." Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. And truly, thank you for participating and for your own dance and for being there. Okay, so now I'm scrolling back a little bit more, squinty, scrolly faces. Aurelia says, "I was so happy when I saw that Aurora and thought of you and what you were saying recently about the Aurora crystalline core." Thank you. And so you did say you were coming through after all. Oh, completely. Wish I had seen it personally, but luckily my friend in New Zealand video called me and I could see it. They're beautiful, because I think, if I'm correct, Aurelia, you're up in Scotland or northern UK, right? I don't know if you could see it up there. The lake pollution was too high in my area. Yeah. So I also was very excited about trying to see it. It was visible in Ojai, but we had coastal fog, which is normal for us because we're not that far from the ocean, maybe about 10 miles away. So at night, as it cools down, and today, like, we have coastal fog, heavy blankets of fog often roll in, and then you can't see the sky. So believe me, I went outside on a couple of nights with my hair in curlers, like looking very silly, trying to look around, see if I could see Aurora up there, but I could not. But I knew it was. And some people actually that I know drove to a nearby mountain in the area here where it's a little bit clearer and up above the soup, and we're able to see. And we had mostly pink glows in the sky here, but some people had some really enormous curtains of energy that are just amazing. And Aurelia also said, "I so need more room to FRL dance." Absolutely, I completely agree, because the dance is a rolling dance. So, having like whatever, a 6-foot square, it's not really the most. We need a larger space. Everybody in the whole world really needs a larger space to be able to fly rainbow lasagna properly. If you can imagine, like, these ballerinas, when they weren't able to go to their studios during the pandemic and they're dancing in their kitchens, because I watched a lot of those videos, and they were like, "We're going to dance anyway," kind of like next to the stove, in a little place where you can. You find your places. And I really am in solidarity with you because I have danced my lasagna in many, many cramped quarters. Not ideal, but you do it anyway. And so, you know, I will always find a spot. And sometimes what I've even done is go to a public park. You won't get arrested for doing this. If you go to a public park, put down like, you know, a picnic blanket or whatever it is, because I don't want anybody to get ticks, because you really do have to watch out for the bioweapons that are in some of these ticks and stuff. So keep yourself clean and safe where you roll around. And, you know, you can put on headphones or whatever if you're not allowed to play your music so that other people can hear you. And then, yeah, do your dancing, do your rolling through, do your self-expression in the park there. And that can be really wonderful. I'm telling you, you can always find a nook for lasagna expression. I endorse it. Do it. It's like positive revolution. Like you're kind of like you're pushing the boundaries a little bit. Yes, you are. But it's totally, you're not hurting anybody else by doing this. So it's just about what is socially appropriate or quote unquote allowed in society. Let me just drink some of my, because we're having a cloudy day. I need a little bit of a lift from my superfood coffee. Thank you. And Aurelia says, yes, people near me could see it, but within walking distance, it was too many streetlights. So we have that problem too at my apartment complex. I could feel the vibe though strongly. And there's a park for sure. Yeah. We also, here in my apartment complex, you know, they have all these lights that are these automated lights, and it's supposedly good because they want to keep people safe so that way you can see everything and there's no whatever burglars. But it also means you can't see the aurora up in the sky, and other wonderful stars and other things like that. So, okay. Thank you for that brief coffee break. Let's move into the curriculum for the day. All right. I'm so excited, but this is also totally related to everything that I was able to accomplish in Sedona. This is about the origins of Flying Rainbow Lasagna, how I first innovated it. I will share with you that immediately, and also how it relates to your DNA. And I'll go through various imagery because I think that will also be very illuminating to you to be able to see things. So first, let's start off with this video. You know, I always immediately set up my whole desktop and then I hope it works. I'm like, everything, I got all these different things. Wait, okay, I hope that this works for us. Let's just collapse this down smaller and go to this over here for us. I hope that this is big on your screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press play, and pictures worth 1,000 words. Animation is worth like 10 million words. So you're just starting to see the formation of Flying Rainbow Lasagna as a three-dimensional animation. And I didn't create the animation, but I storyboarded it to an animation artist. And what you're seeing is it's a jumping back and forth motion that what creates, I'll rewind now so you can see it again. What creates this shape in reality is the action of that central convergence point jumping up and jumping down. And then you got a little scrubber in front of you. You can't see it effectively. Up, down, up, down, up, down. It's an up, down 8 times, okay? So that helps hopefully for you to be able to see that it's not a static image. It is something that is moving, and it is the waveformed end result of a movement of something that is a non-physical object. So we're looking at the end result of energy flowing. That is how that is created. I'll move through a couple of other images to be able to start with you here. Wait, before I do this, let me clean up my desktop because I'm going to, no, let me do it in front of everyone because this is going to be so much fun. You're going to be like, wait, Aurora, didn't you do your homework? No. Pull all these things up and be like, wait, okay, I'm going to show you this. Wait, first we have to make this go bye-bye. Then I have to make this go bye-bye. Oh, then I have to make this go bye-bye. And then this, and then this, and then this, and then one of these, and then one of these, and one more of these. Ah, I'm finally where I want to be. Okay, good. All right, so first off, let's start off with this lovely picture. This is a little sketch that I did years ago, but I think that it shows really, really well the concept of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna as being the end result of the initial origin shape, which is the 4 vortex shape, which we've been learning about, this toroidal energy field known as chakras in this class for many, many months now. And this central area here where you can see this, some of the critical information, it is really a bisection, the way that you bisect a grapefruit, of the toroidal shape, and then an expansion as this central convergence point here is expanded into this direction, which is arbitrarily labeled as up, and this direction arbitrarily labeled as down, and then creating this flying rainbow lasagna, which you are familiar with from my various sculptures. Let's move into another image that's going to really inform you a lot. That's this one over here, and let's see if I can make it bigger for you, because I know some people watch on your phone and you're probably squinting with so much difficulty. These are, and I know that's a little bit blurry when I blow it up that much, these are some of the different DNA behaviors that you can have. DNA has behavior. These are some of the different patterns, like crochet patterns, that DNA can make with itself. So DNA is not merely one big long string. DNA, so just as the flying rainbow lasagna is not a static image, but this is a sculpture that is a form that is not moving, but you're envisioning now that it's made out of movement, and it's a waveform that's constantly dancing and moving like me, all right? Your DNA is not a static object, and it is very much like a weaving or a crochet, and it has behavior in what it does. And these are some of the observed and measured behaviors, the ways that it is twisted together or twined together, the way that it makes these perfect circles that are called plasmids, and the way that it makes figure eights, more complex circles, all the way down to the bottom where you can see these larger trefoils and knot shapes. And these are all made DNA twisting and twirling amidst itself, okay? You don't have to memorize them. I just want you to be aware of them. I just want you to know that that's some of what your present level of science is able to perceive and know about. This is not my image, but I hope that you'll be able to see that it's a good little scaled representation of the ways that DNA weaves together in complexity that is called supercoiling. I used to have in my supplemental homework videos playlist on YouTube a very nice supercoiling video, but it's been there for 10 years. I think they might have taken it down at this point. That brings the viewer on a journey from the simplest level of supercoiling, which is just one strand, which is what you see over here kind of towards the left of your screen, through this process of winding the DNA single strand around proteins that are called histones in a movement that is similar to when you wind thread around a spool, and then how those histones are clustered together to create these larger formations, which create something that is actually more of a donut shape that has a central tube, or a spring-like shape that has a central tube, and then how that coils in on itself greater and greater and greater until you get to what you might be more familiar with, this X-shaped chromosome or the Y-shaped chromosome. So if you have ever seen the rigging on those old ships, oh, I need to drink water. Hold on a moment. My voice is still very tired. Thank you for your patience. On the big, giant, tall sailing ships from the 1800s, they would have these giant hemp ropes, you know, like to hold the sails up. And the ropes might be like this fat around. And what were they made of? They were made of many, many smaller ropes. So they would start with like just twining together some hemp, and then they would make those smaller braids and braid together bigger braids. And then you take those bigger braids and you braid them together into even bigger braids. That is exactly what your DNA is doing. Your DNA twists itself and twists itself and twists itself. A huge amount of kinetic energy goes into that. Kinetic energy becomes potential energy. That's like a coiled spring. And then that coiled spring twists itself again. This is the process of supercoiling. And through this process of supercoiling, first of all, compactness happens. If you were to unfurl the entirety of DNA that's within one nucleus of one of your cells, you would have something that's so long, it would easily stretch as long as a football field. And it contains a lot of information. And in order for all of that to fit inside of you, so that you don't have to be the size of a football field, it gets coiled up very, very effectively. It's the magic of topology, which is surface behavior. P.S. If you're going traveling, like I recently did, I didn't have to fly on a plane, I drove, but I still wanted to pack my bags as efficiently as possible. You know, it's the most efficient way to pack your bags, like your t-shirts, your dresses, your underpants, all your different stuff. You roll them. You don't fold them. You roll them. You want to roll everything up into like these little cylinders, and then you put your little cylinders together into your carry-on bags. So that's one of Aurora's life tips, flying rainbow lasagna packing style. And because that's what your DNA does. And DNA rolled up into a chromosome like this mostly happens only during a limited portion of the DNA cell's lifespan. The cells of your body all have various different lifespans. The longest lived cells of your body are your cerebral central nervous system cells that can be with you for your whole entire life. Those cells can live for 60 years and above, especially your spinal cord cells. Other cells of your body have a relatively fast turnover rate, like your liver regenerates, your bones can clearly regenerate. Your epithelial cells, that's your skin cells, lining of your stomach, and the lining of your blood vessels all regenerate, and those guys regenerate fast, about every 8 days. So you have some parts of your cellular structure that are regenerate in like a very, very fast way, a fast turnover, and some are longer lived and have a slower turnover. The only real time when it's necessary to quote unquote pack up all of your DNA into these chromosome shapes is when the cells are going to subdivide. Here's a parent cell. Imagine this is a big giant mama cell. And when it's going to subdivide, it makes daughter cells. Bloop, and then that's the next generation. And when that happens, first of all, in a cell, the information is contained in the membrane. You, of course, have memory that is contained in the neurological cellular structure and the patterns contained of your brain. But you also have information that's contained in the presence of the fatty cells, the phospholipids of your cell membranes. And when a cell subdivides and creates the next generation of daughter cells, it passes on its information to the next generation. So if, let's say, you are exposed to a particular thing like hot or cold or an irritant, and the cell membrane had to learn about that. So, I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm irritated. Then it had a response in order to keep your body in homeostasis. It passes that information along to the next generation, who then learns, oh, yes, sometimes you'll feel hot, cold, or irritated. Here's what you do, right? But also, what if you're exposed to something that is toxic, unhealthy, and does not lead you towards greater levels of longevity? What if it's false light? What if you get exposed to illusions, false light, or erroneous information? The parent cell then passes that on to the daughter cells, and then you have a negative cascade of false information that is brought forward into the future. So a lot of the clearing and activations that I do clear out that cellular structure so that false information does not go forward into your future self, which will be your fingernails, lining of your intestines, and your everything that you're regenerating and that's becoming new in the next generation. So when you are going to have this subdivide experience, it's called mitosis, and you can look up some great videos on this because they do have a scanning electron microscope now that is effective enough to see this in action. The DNA aligns itself. First, it organizes itself into these perfect chromosomes, and it organizes itself kind of like the stitching on a football, and then it splits itself apart. And this is all an amazing orchestration to be able to do this. And then once it does that and reestablishes the nuclear membrane, then the DNA can relax again. Just like when I get to my destination, I can open up my carefully packed bags and everything can fly out into the room. My socks can go over here, my underwear can go over here, and everything can go everywhere. No, I'm very neat, believe me, wherever I go. I'm very respectful of spaces. So wait, I think I have to press a button because yes, someone just came into the meeting. So I'm just going through some imagery first, then I'll get more into you can see my notes over here. Oh, and when you come into the meeting, everyone, please be certain to mute yourself because I don't want to have to hop out of what I'm doing in order to be able to do that and break my flow. So here, of course, you have two images that I did not create. These are of the molecular structure of DNA. And I wanted to show this to you so that you got an accurate view, as there are many, many graphics that show DNA as simply being either a twisted ladder or simplified line form, and it's neither of those things. It is a very complex molecular structure that is shaped more like a spiral, and it has both a major and a minor groove. Just like music, I like that it's called the groove, and music is in slang called groovy. It has a rhythm a visual rhythm to it, and it also is literally a vibrating string in the same way that a musical instrument is like a vibrating string. Here's my piano. Oh, wait, you probably can't hear it. I turned off. Okay, so wait, now I do have to press stop share and go back to my face. Here. I turn it off the thing because I don't want you to hear my treadmill or my dog barking. No, go back to this. And now you hear two things. You hear both my silly and you also hear two things. But none of those is a grand piano. But one day I will have a grand piano that has big, long, vibrating strings, and that's what makes the music that you hear emitting forward. So I have a synthesizer that makes an approximation of that. But the key point is that your DNA is or are the vibrating strings of the instrument of your being, and they create the song of you. And your DNA of each person and each organism is unique. This is part of the amazing, miraculous complexity of the world that you live within, and it is also part of the protective diversity of the system. You're not only not clones and not interchangeable, but that makes it much, much harder for interlopers and negative things to try to hack or mispurpose your biological organism. And so, yeah, not only are not all humans interchangeable, and you each have DNA that's unique, every single fruit fly is non-interchangeable and has unique DNA. Every single, dog out there. It's a lot of unique organisms. Here are some organisms that are not unique in their DNA. Bananas and potatoes. Any plant that propagates through cuttings and through runners, as opposed to through seeds and live offspring. So plants that propagate through cuttings are called clones, and they are vulnerable. This is one of the reasons why there's something that was called the Irish potato famine. There, of course, were many nation-state geopolitical fraught circumstances that made people starve and die, but a large portion of it was crop failure that happened because of monocropping potatoes that were all the same type. And one blight came in and knocked out all of them, and that was the major food supply in that particular area of the world. So diversity, diversity, diversity. It's that's one of those. I am making an allusion to what is it called? The advice that you will hear in financial circles that says, diversify. Like, have a little bit of gold and a little bit of silver. Have a lot of things in your portfolio. Own some land, own some Bitcoin, own some this, own some that. Diversify. So you got to diversify in physical reality as well as in the imagined reality of money and stuff like that. I also want you to look at the image on the left over here. Wait, we'll make it bigger for you. No, now be working for me, technology. Come on. Oh, technology is so naughty. When I drove that rental car, it sometimes turned off my air conditioning or did something that I didn't want it to do. Technology is being very naughty these days. This is a cross-section of what it looks like to look down the DNA spiral. You're used to looking at it from the side, but this is what it looks like when you look down the spiral. I have to bring this up because there's a lot of claptrap that I see on the internet. I'm drinking my coffee here. And it's not going to be the end of the world, but some people are nonsense people, and they say that the cross-section of DNA looks exactly like a flower of life. It does not. It does not in any way look like the flower of life. So this has 10 radial spokes, and the flower of life has 6, and this has a very, very different presence to it than the flower of life. So please don't conflate the two, and recognize the miraculous structure of what you are living within, and don't simplify it. That's why I really wanted to bring that to your attention. And you can also see over here, major groove, minor groove. It might be a little bit difficult for you to conceive of what's going on here, but again, you're looking down the tunnel at an overlapping, many multi-layered view of what you see in these structures of what your DNA is, right? Now I'm going to get into some still shots from my lessons, and I really, really want you to check out the lessons from 10 years ago, because I think I use the imagery very, very well. So first, this is not my image, but I use this in order to show to you that it is part of DNA's natural behavior. So DNA naturally, I didn't get this across to you enough. DNA is naturally, in its behavior, unfurling itself, twisting itself, splicing itself, reweaving itself. Why does it do this? Because it is so tightly coiled and so full of the potential energy, of the kinetic energy of twisting, that for the RNA messengers to get inside of it, like here you can see messenger RNA synthesized here, the DNA either needs to be slightly unfurled or split apart like a zipper that is unzipped. Otherwise, the information is not accessible to the RNA messenger, which is like a worker that goes into the rare books department of a library, accesses the blueprints of what is to be built or recognized, makes copies of it, and then emerges with those copies, which can then be sent off to the workers to be able to be used on the work site. And it doesn't matter if the blueprints get, because they're copies, they can get soy sauce on them, coffee stains, greasy fingers, whatever. It doesn't matter, because it's just being used for that particular purpose of protein building, but also all sorts of the direction and orchestration of the processes of life within the body. So RNA is like the copying process. Major emphasis from my notes from 10 years ago, reproduction. Many people are familiar with DNA as an aspect of reproduction and focus on it mostly intergenerationally, from the parents' generation to the children's generation. You change a person's DNA, their sperm or their ovum, and then it goes, those changes are passed on through sexual reproduction into the next generation. However, you are using DNA to reproduce whether or not you are sexually active and whether or not you are becoming a parent through live birth. You are using DNA to reproduce your own cells. So you are using your DNA to be able to produce and reproduce copies of who you are, to send yourself through time. Very similar to my chugging along self-paving sidewalk machine known as the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. You're generating your own cells of your body that you will live in next week, and you keep yourself going through this process of self-replication. This is relevant to the Flying Rainbow Lasagna because, key point, at certain points in your DNA's natural behavior, it is unzipped like a zipper. So here, this picture shows that. And you can even see the various proteins. There are really only 4 proteins that are in DNA. But out of those 4 proteins, and because you have billions of strands and billions of codons and connections throughout your body, you're able to make almost any kind of song. Just like on my piano, I've got 88 keys. But out of those 88 keys, I could play Mozart, I could play Jimi Hendrix, I can play anything. But literally, all that we really have is we have T, oh, you can't hear it, it's too loud. T, A, C, and G. All right? Those are the 4 basic letters. And this guy always goes with this guy. And this guy always goes with this guy. I hope you could hear that, and I hope nobody had their eardrums hurt by headphones. T always goes with A, and C always goes with G, and these are the lifelong partners. And this is called the do-si-do. If you don't know do-si-do, it's a reference to American square dancing, a folk dance usually done in a circle where you have a partner across from you, and it's a circle dance, splitting apart, perambulating, and then coming back together with your partner. This is what DNA does inside of your body all the time. It's kind of interesting that humans developed a folk dance that perfectly expresses, through group dance, what your DNA is doing inside of the individual. And believe me, the folk dance developed hundreds of years before anybody was able to know about through a microscope what DNA is. During this unzipping process, DNA is slightly unstable. When it is zipped up together, it has a formfulness and a stability. When it is unzipped like this, it is a little bit vulnerable to fragmentation and breakage. So it only does segments at a time. If you unzipped your whole entire DNA at one time, you would no longer be a viable organism. So it is essential to recognize that. Now let's move on to the next image. Here you can see the flying rainbow lasagna being used as a type of genetic placeholder. Please remember also to envision that this is a rotating, oscillating memory field. I called it memory field, but I meant to say energy field. But I always think it's interesting when my brain makes these strange short circuits and I choose the wrong word. I'm like, why did I say that? Because your DNA does carry memory. So this placeholder is rotating around like this within your DNA, even at the same time that it's oscillating back and forth like this. So this is an energy field, not like a stuff thing. Let's laugh. It's hard to talk about this with words. It's an ephemeral item, not a physicality item in terms of, it is an intangible. So in the body, you would not find tiny microscopic flying rainbow lasagnas, although that would be pretty cool if you looked under the microscope, live blood analysis, and you're able to see a bunch of little tiny things like this. But it's my prediction that you will not. It is my prediction that you would see instead energy fields that are acting upon the behavior of something that is perceptible in the physical world, such as your strands of DNA. And the key point is it acts as a placeholder holding that opening where the strands are unzipped so that there is a form of stability, so that you're not going to die from being too much in a state of quantum indeterminacy if too many of your DNA strands are unzipped. And you can do this in a small portion of your DNA, a large portion of your DNA. And again, every single cell of your body contains a long strand of DNA as long as the football field. That you have a lot to work with. You don't just have 88 keys that you can use in amazing multiple hyper combinations of different things that can happen. You have, even within one cell and within one strand of your very long chromosomes, and you have all of these different pairs of chromosomes, you have so much diversity and complexity to work with. So you don't just create one flying rainbow lasagna in one little cell. Like in my shoulder, I created one flying rainbow lasagna and I changed and unzipped one little tiny thing. That would not be that much, even though that would be a lot. But you have these in the trillions, in the billions, really. It makes you part of an enormous processing center where you are able to process more and more and more information because of the complexity of your system. So complex systems, yay. Complex systems, yay. Just like the diversity of DNA makes it less hackable, and the uniqueness of your DNA soul signature and the music that each cell of your body plays is yay. These many multiple augmentations that you can make, and the patterning of it is also yay. Because, I'm a composer, and what if I composed a song and I'm one person and I am playing one piano? Here I am playing one piano. But what if I have someone else who's playing? And then, oops, we combine ourselves, and that's just two pianos. The complexities, trillions of pianos in one person. In one organism, you could have a complexity level of trillions or billions of connections and transformative undulations and dances. And then when I have an event, like if I have 10 dancers, add a 0 times 10. Billions and trillions times 10, then we get up into levels of calculation that are almost incomprehensible to the human neurology and to your daily waking consciousness and your analytical mind, but not incomprehensible to your body. When we are coordinating as a group of flying rainbow lasagna dancers, and lovely dancer, giving hat tip to Michelle, who came up with FRL, FERL, F-E-R-A-L. We're feral flying rainbow lasagna flyers. I love that completely. We're ferals. Many of us dancing together, the levels of complexity become startling. So one application, and I'm going to go through this a lot. This is just going through all of my images for today. One flying rainbow lasagna is going to be transformative. Multiple flying rainbow lasagnas on this level are also going to be transformative, and that's just working on the level of one strand of DNA. And I didn't get enough into the vocabulary, but when your DNA is largely taken out of its chromosomal form and unknit, the sweater of your DNA is unknit and pulled out like a giant tangle of yarn, that is called chromatin. And chromatin fills up the entire inside of the nuclei of each cell and is like a big giant quivering mass of this DNA information substance. And the flying rainbow lasagna can be utilized or applied to any area of that big quivering mass. Quivering mass is not the right vocabulary words. I'm not coming up with the right, what is it? Feelings of words. Because quivering makes it feel like it's afraid, but it's like oscillating, vibrating. It's not the Blob. It's much more positive than the movie The Blob. Again, apologies because my voice is tired and I have to drink a lot of water. So now this is another still shot from the lessons from 10 years ago. So here you have a coil of DNA. I told you that at a certain level of supercoiling, when the DNA is not fully on its journey of becoming a supercoiled chromosome, but partway there from a simplified strand into a larger, whatever, tumble of knots of hemp put together into a giant rig for your sails, back to that analogy of the sailing ships. At a certain point, your DNA is coiled up and makes a spring-like series of tori or toruses or donut shapes. And you can also have DNA flying rainbow lasagna oscillations back and forth along that string. So if you guys don't know about different forms of waveforms, there's a waveform that goes up and down like a sine curve, right? That's like if you took a jump rope, if you can see my cursor wiggling, but the cursor and the jump rope wiggle up and down, longitudinal waves. But then there's also compression waves, and that's if you have a slinky and a spring where things get closer together, farther apart, closer together, farther apart. That's what sound waves are. Sound waves are compression waves. And in the coiled aspect of your not fully supercoiled DNA, you can experience compression waves where you can have the flying rainbow lasagna oriented, as you can see in this photo, in this little drawing that I did, along the axis of the spring. And that's why I also showed you that image of what it looks like looking down the central tube of the DNA, like looking down a tunnel, because you can flying rainbow lasagna down the tunnels of your DNA. All right, let's even get that picture out of the way, and let's show you, here's another great depiction of the flying rainbow lasagna. That's not this yellow sculpture, that's actually a different one that I did that was more delicate and broke. So we have a yellow sculpture, the sequel over here, but basically when you take this yellow sculpture and you move it in a context, this is how we create the flying rainbow lasagna. So now I will go back to my face and we will talk about this. And wait, before I move on fast, we're going to talk about this yellow sculpture, but let me get to your comments and your questions. Okay. Aurelia says, very cool. Many years back, I got the true shape of a cross section of DNA come to me through a download as I was drawing, and I looked a lot like this image. Good. I'm very pleased that you were able to see that. And also, that is not surprising to me at all, because when you activate your inner vision and this tendril of attention, I usually use this as my little shorthand for tendril of attention, and it comes out of your mind, you can use that to touch on and learn about anything, especially and including your own anatomy. If I touch on myself with my tendril of attention, I can learn about my cell membrane. I can learn about my DNA. I do. I can learn about any of my body parts, and I've had to do that. Again, I've been here for 20 years now at this point, but I still consider myself a little bit of a newcomer. And I'm like, what's this? What does this stuff do? What does this thing do? I don't know. Let me touch on it and find out. And that's my learning process. So then I will, read about it later, but there were many things I didn't know. And then also in using, when I do session work with other people, I'm like, thank you so much for trusting me, because I will be placing my mind inside of your body very respectfully. So with the tendril of my attention into my mind, into people's bodies, and then I might feel stuff, and I might say something silly like, you know, whatever, like, I'm in your kneecap, or I'm in your earlobe. It's like I'm putting myself in these different places. And Steve says, do the colors of the FRL sculpture have significance? Great question. And the answer is a big yes. These rainbow colors are not merely my own arbitrary obsession with rainbows. They have everything to do with the chakra system. And I've been speaking about that in this class for some amount of time now. The chakra system as representing different layers of your both physical and non-physical ephemeral body of pure information and data that corresponds to different layers of reality and are moving at different rates. Very, very quickly to go through it for you. Beautiful. Thank you, Aurelia. From red, which is where I usually start, because that's the beginning of the human octave. Your physicality structure. Red is the physical world, physical body, other people, physical matter, edifices in the world, like a room you can walk into or something like that. And it's definitely something that we are most familiar with, and it also represents the I am presence. This is review, everyone. Orange is the level of the mammalian emotions, not the level of pure unconditional love where you might love the universe or a plant or a tree, but orange is the level of love where you say, oh baby, I really, really love you. I really, really am attracted to you. I really, really want to hug you and kiss you and reproduce with you and make a family with you. Orange is also the level of revulsion, where you say, I hate you. I really, really hate you. I don't hate any of you, clearly. I don't like you. I want to get away from you, get away from me, or maybe even I'm going to hurt you or something like that. That comes from that level of emotion, and that's appropriate because animals need to sometimes fight off stuff that they don't like. Yellow is the level of the human intellect, and it is the cerebrum in your brain that is the mitigation of these lower tendencies. So the red tendency says, I am. I'm allowed to exist. Hey, you, I'm looking out for number one. I'm allowed to exist. I do what I do. It's like the basis of existence. But it is mitigated by the emotions of living in community that are represented by orange mammalian emotions. And then that, on top of that, is mitigated by your human daily intellect that says, maybe I should do something more than just assess the world as a series of things that I can either eat or have sex with. There's something more to life, and this is what the daily human waking intellect is. It is located in your cerebrum, the convoluted surface area of the brain, and it's also known as the human ego. It's also a hacked level of humanity. Up from there is the level of your heart, which is green, which is unconditional love, which is where you are in love with the world. And when you're in love with the world, or in love with the stars, or in love with the river, it does not in any way mean that you want to have genital contact with those items or things or concepts. It means you love them. You literally are in love with them. You can be in love with life. And what that really means is that you are producing a love tone, which I represent as the note A. Let's play an A. The love tone that is created by an equal rapport of giving and receiving. You can be in love with time by being so present in the moment that you're not drawn out by the remembrances of the past or reaching forward into anticipations of the future. You are literally just focused right now in this moment, experiencing one moment per moment, which is really one, not even a second. It's a tinier increment than a second. It's separated at the Planck length. And Planck length is 10 to the negative 35, which is about the width of 3 protons, which is very, very, very tiny. So you are moving along at the Planck length, like how I'm one footstep, the next footstep, the next footstep. In time, you are not moving along like 1 second per second, although you are, but you're moving along at 1 Planck length per Planck length, and those are like the train cars of reality that you move through. But that's your love tone rapport with life and with being alive, and it's a frictionless tone that has to do with, again, equal giving and receiving. And up from there is, or are, the higher faculties. Throat, which is communication and authenticity and honesty. Insight, which is also your Christ connection. And the crown, which is representative to your DNA and your connection to divinity. Brief pause, because we need to hugs, cheeky. We need to hug Cheeky. We need to praise Cheeky because Cheeky was such an amazing good dog. She's always a very good dog. Come here. Come here. Everybody on the internet needs to know what a good girl Cheeky was. How good she was in the car. How amazingly patient and accommodative she was. How good she was. She only ate her dog food. She didn't eat any human food. She didn't steal her bag or anything like that. Although she did steal some cat food from another friend that we stayed with. That was her only dietary indiscretion, and in every way was the best dog of the world. And we did put on Steely Dan in the car for you because you really, really like that music. So when she gets a little agitated or something about Steely Dan, it calms her right down, so we put her on. So Cheeky's an amazing dog, and also we really, really enjoyed so many people that know Cheeky from our weekly classes, being able to meet her in person and get the hugs in person. So that was really, really special for Cheeky because she doesn't really, technology doesn't have a smell-o-vision for dogs. It's just auditory, visual for humans. So she didn't really get to know you guys, although you got to know her. We might need some bribes. So brief pause. Let's bribe Cheeky because you know that I have these things ready for her. Brief pause. Brief pause there, thank you very much. And Steve got the explanation of all these different things. I glossed over it because I wanted to bribe my dog, but the crown is actually a very, very important level of your energetic anatomy to be able to emphasize on. And sorry, my thing beeps when it stops. We'll start it again. Beeping, beeping, beeping. Yes, the crown chakra is analogous to your DNA. It is your divine connection. So your DNA is a bridge of light, and it is the connection that you have on a physical level to the world of pure abstraction and the world of time. Wait, we might also need to pause one more time in order to be able to let someone go OUT. Hold on. Your crown chakra is directly analogous to the center of every single one of your nuclei. So your nuclei are the sanctum sanctorum, the rare books room of the library of you, the most special place. And when I do sessions, I don't just say like, let me just dive directly into your DNA. It is much more correct to go through the body systems first and have a person's body beyond their intellect, because people give me consent to do this work. But that doesn't mean that their body is like, yes, I'm ready right away. Like you have to kind of, I joke, like sidle up to the DNA, not just dive right in, because that is like the most crucial place in the body. And I also speak, I think, eloquently from my class from 10 years ago about the actions of the crown, the actions of the DNA. It is not merely a dictator that says, I declare and I tell all of you what to do. It actually is, has a lot of artistry in what you activate in your DNA. So what do I mean by all of this? Your DNA exists, again, I'm going to emphasize this, bridge of light, meaning a bridge between your physicality structure and that which can be perceived by a human microscope, and non-physicality, a world of pure possibilities and probabilities that could be considered mathematical, your chakra system, which is an energy field. And it's not just your DNA as a static object, but it's the movement and vibration and music of your DNA that is that connection. How you play your DNA like a piano. And so mostly humans have been unconscious, moving through their days, unconscious of how every single thought and feeling state is affecting the behavior of DNA. Because DNA, it's like papyrus scrolls. They're all scrolled up like this, you can't read them. But then with a thought, those papyrus scrolls can open up and then read the inside. Or some pages of the book are stuck together, like here my fingers are like the pages of a book, a tightly coiled spring, and the RNA messenger can't get inside. And maybe that part of the DNA says bad stuff. Like, keep it scrolled up, don't read that story, it's not a good story. Or maybe you want to be able to unfurl that aspect of your DNA and read it, because maybe that's where you find out, like, here's how you rejuvenate, here's how you stay young, here's how you heal stuff. And this is what I mean when I say dormant capacities within humanity. When you fly Rainbow Lasagna, what you are doing is creating the topological puzzle solution to your own DNA architecture. Learning how you have to twist, furl, or unfurl, or splice, or relieve tension in areas of your DNA structure so that it becomes accessible to you. And this is the art of epigenetics. Epi is the prefix that means a phenomenon within a phenomenon, like an epiphyte is an orchid. It doesn't have its own root system. It grows on another organism. It's a phenomenon within the phenomenon. It's a code that rules the code. That is epigenetics. So when genes were first discovered in mid-century, the previous century, human beings presumed if something is written in your book, it's inevitable for it to happen. If you have either a disease or a malformation written in your DNA, then you think it's inevitably going to happen. But then as scientists became more sophisticated, and I always point to the work of Bruce Lipton, not a complete endorsement of the man or his associations and affiliations in the world of science, but did good work and groundbreaking stuff as a biological research scientist to be able to get people to comprehend epigenetics, that studies done on identical twins show just because you have the potential for a disease, you're not necessarily going to manifest it. Both twins have the same DNA. One twin manifests a genetic disease like cancer and the other one does not. And why is that? Because they started with exactly the same book, but their lives went differently. And the answer to that is what influences these vibrating strings of the music of your DNA has everything to do with your mind and your feeling state. And it's not outside of your control. It's very, very much within not only your control, but let's say your influence. What you're thinking and feeling influences your genetic behavior and your genetic expression. This is why I do a class about flying rainbow lasagna, to begin to prepare your mind and have your intellectual, the gatekeeper of your intellect, start to speak through belief to your body about what is possible, about how to transform. And I show you it as an example. I'm exemplary with my body. I'm like, yes, I'm regenerating. I've healed from many neurological injuries. Clearly I'm functional. And remaining youthful, even as I move chronologically through time. These are all your potentials too. What I did was I took the basic building blocks of the body that I'm within. That is this woman's body, who would have died otherwise. Or very complex languaging around that situation. I'm not even going to go into it right now. But I will go into my origins, how I created and invented flying rainbow lasagna very much in this sharing. And what I did was I took that potential, and through different levels of behavior, I played the instrument to make a new song. And the new song is Flying Rainbow Lasagna and my presence here as Aurora. And I did this in order to show what is possible, all right? That it would be very, very different if I lived in an ephemeral, otherworldly state, jokingly, as I say, like floating on a cloud, eating an interdimensional strawberry or something fluffy, whatever, whipped cream, and being like, la, 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 everything feels so great. Oh gosh, like, just figure out your ascension down there. Here, I'll just throw down a flying rainbow lasagna. Figure out your ascension. And you'd be like, Aurora, like, it's very hard. And I'm like, well, let me see. And I'm in the body with you. And I'm learning about, like, whoa, food goes in here. You have to do stuff. You have to pay your Geico bill. All these different silly things for staying alive here. And also, I'm able to exemplify how you transform on a genetic level. And I feel like that is something that I'm a complete expert at, that I feel very, very comfortable at being able to show and teach and share with others. And that is what I do in these live in-person workshops, because it is really a lot easier, I think, for you to model as a template your own experience upon me when you're in my presence. You can feel it more easily, I think, than through the computer, even though you can still feel it through the computer. But boy, oh boy, I think it's so much more powerful in person. And I do these intellectual teachings and sharings, and also my visual artwork and auditory music, in order to be able to convey to your senses and your intellect this feeling state. My music is very intentional. I make it for myself and I make it for others to create the feeling state of eternal life. My visuals and having my house plastered in artwork is not by accident. I intentionally fill my visual field with these patterns all the time when I'm painting them and when I look at my finished artwork. It's intentional. And then these long classes that I do, and I'm always very grateful for people that spend, several hours with me each week listening to what I have to share. I'm taking you on a journey that begins with the journey of your mind. Like I'm taking your hand. I'm kind of like, let's do flying rainbow lasagna. Let me take you on a journey, and I'm going to tell you all sorts of different things that basically speak to your intellect and get you to start to believe that there is another way, and then you have to find your path, because my path is unique to me. So I started out with this body and with these DNA strings in this particular instrument, and I learned how to do, just like a Rubik's Cube, twist and turn and furl and unfurl and do all these different complex maneuvers with my body on an inner genetic level to be able to unlock these dormancies for regeneration, healing, rejuvenation, vitality, intellectual capacitation, and awakening of the higher senses. Each one of you has the higher senses. When I talked about that, from love and above, this is what I'm talking about. It's not something that's only for a select group of potential ascended masters. Oh, wait. Let me press pause. So I jokingly use the analogy, although I am every time affirming to you that I am not a transhumanist in any way. But I jokingly use the analogy to say that the software changes the hardware. So when you come to this class and you listen to me and I'm speaking, first of all, I'm giving you light information with my words. And also, this is a form of software. Software is genetic behavior, concepts and ideas. And depending upon what software you are running through your body hardware changes. So every single one of you came here as a little tiny child with the most perfect divine architecture in your DNA, the dance of eternal life. And you weren't dancing towards death. You weren't even really aware of the concept of death. That is how much death is a foreign concept and something that is not an innate part of the fabric of reality. And the people around you are doing a particular dance. And let's say it's a herky-jerky dance, a dance like this, not a very fluid or graceful dance. They're all getting old, getting diseased, and then expecting one day to die. But you come here as a little child and your DNA is dancing like this. Right? Beautiful divine patterns of eternal life. And then through everything, not only cultural exposure, like when you are old enough to comprehend language and someone teaches you this is what death is, like they sit you down with a little conversation and they tell you about like where your goldfish went, if your goldfish died and you flushed it down the toilet or buried it in a shoebox in the backyard, or maybe if you had a larger death, if your grandma went bye-bye or someone is not in your life anymore, because little kids have questions. Little kids ask a lot of questions. I don't have children. I don't have physical children. But if I've done a lot of childcare. I know little kids. They ask a lot of questions. Maybe that's why their parents hired me as nannies. They're like, I can't deal with these questions. Go ask Aurora. And I'm like, okay, I'll answer these questions for the next several hours while I work with your children. Why is the sky blue? Why is water wet? Why is this and why is that, right? Because they're trying to figure out the world once you gain language to be able to get a concept of how the world is structured and the meaningfulness behind what you perceive. And comprehending death is a part of that, because it is just incomprehensible that like at one moment the goldfish is there and it's swimming, and then at another moment the goldfish is not there, and where did it go? And that concept of death, once it is perceived, changes your beautiful, natural, divine, eternal energy patterns into the same type of patterns that mom and dad and the rest of your family are running. And it's not just the concept that is conveyed orally through languaging. It's also, as soon as a little baby is born in this world, you know, they introduce it to everyone else. Everyone takes a little moment holding the baby. They pass it around at family events. And there's a genetic imprint, because you are singing a song, whether or not you say it with words. Your body is singing a song. You might be singing the song of nearsightedness or diabetes. And as the little child is held by its family members, it is imprinted with these vulnerabilities. And then the little child starts to grow up and develop nearsightedness and diabetes. This is not an inevitability at all. These are activations of genetic structures. And if you activate a genetic structure, it means you're opening up the book. The RNA messengers are reading it, and they're saying, okay, everybody, time to build some nearsightedness, then we're going to build some diabetes. Cancel all of that. You guys don't want any of that. But you know what I'm talking about here. So it was very, very erroneous in mid-century, science to be able to say, if it's written in your DNA, it's inevitable to happen. It's not inevitable to happen. But if you're in the same circumstances and surrounded by all of these people who are running that software, then your hardware will conform to that software. And I am a walk-in, and I come here through the greatest levels of not only like difficulty and unlikelihood, but I also come here with an example of cosmic law and correct ethics, that I was not to impose my new flying rainbow lasagna genetic structure upon you, but to make it available to you. It's kind of like this. Okay, great. Like, you got all these different people imprinting you with the concept of death. Here's me, just carrying my lasagna over my shoulder like here. Coming into your world. It was not like that at all. I'm being very facetious. But they imprint you as a tiny infant with all of these really not very good inevitabilities in terms of your health and your longevity. And I come here with something else that is really good. But it's not appropriate for me to just be like, hey, let me just yoink away all of those familial impressions and just plaster flying rainbow lasagna on top of you instead. It had to be an offering that is offered in freedom. So this is very, very different than the work that I do, removing these naughty unmentionables from people's bodies. I don't need explicit consent to do that, because that stuff takes away your freedom. That stuff takes away your ability to see and know and even make a choice. So that's like helping a person to sober up after they've been, horribly drugged against their will, so that they even don't know who they are and what they want. I'm like, let's get these drugs out of your system first. Then you can make a choice about who you are. But up until the point that these things became so pervasive in our environment and so very, very naughty all the time, what I did was an approach that was very much not take it or leave it, but an offering. So one example is, I really do love working with young people. It was not by accident that I did a lot of work being a babysitter, nanny, and in childcare, because young people I could offer this to, not as an intellectual teacher, like you, and now it's also 20 years later, and I've much, much more found or created my tribe in connecting to you guys, but I'm talking about like in the first several years that I was here as Aurora, and there were not that many humans, adult or whatever chronological age to relate to. Little young people were very, very open to my message, and my message was not a verbal academic sharing, but was instead an embodiment. And even now, what I found is like I walk around in the park and you might see like mama with a stroller and the little kid is in there, and whenever we walk by, I always I don't do anything to the child, clearly, I respect parental boundaries so much, but what I do is you see a little kid, right, and I wave and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I'm almost always wearing my bright rainbow clothing, and I'm being my flying rainbow lasagna self. And some little children love the lasagna energy, and they are not only reaching out for me physically with their hands, but they're also reaching out with their energy and with their tendril of attention. And they're like, hey lady, whatever you're doing, whatever type of dance you're doing, I like it better. I like that song better than the family song of nearsightedness and diabetes, right? Some of them attenuate to me beautifully. And some of these little kids, they don't like me. And I'm not insulted because it's their free will choice. Some of them cling to their parents. They're like, I don't think I like that song. I like my ancestral song better. I don't want to change. And that's fair. That's called free will. I bring this to your attention because who I am as a cosmic visitor, or whatever, larger scale visitor, is so very different behaviorally and in my ethics and my values than what you have been beset with. Very, very intentional use of the word beset. Set. Unwanted invaders who have been trying to hijack your DNA and diminish your free will, take over you, take over your minds, take over your planet, take all your resources. I am not like them at all. And I've demonstrated this for 20 years, being able to show and demonstrate to you that I come to you in respect of your consent and in respect of your free will, with an offering of a new way of being, but not an obligation or an imposition. And that is everything in forming a real relationship. You cannot have a real relationship that is based on lies. If some extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional or blah blah, whatever word, visitor came here and lied to you and wore a false mask and manipulated you and did all these things, and then you found out about it later, there's betrayal, lack of trust, and you should reject them. You should, because you'd be like, you know something, how am I ever going to trust this guy or girl or creature? How am I ever going to trust this creature? Because it lied to you from the beginning. If it falsely portrayed itself as one thing or another thing, and it has probably extensive levels of self-justification and shielding, like, oh, I had to lie to you for this or that. I was keeping you safe. I was this thing, I was thatting. Don't believe any of it. It's not appropriate. It's just exactly like if you're a female and you're looking for a male, or a male looking for a female in a real partnership. If someone came to you wearing a mask and they weren't their true self, and then you married them, and then you took off the mask and found out that's who you really are, and they were like, yeah, baby, but I had to lie to you because of this and because of that and because of whatever. And then you're like, wow, like, I dated this guy for 5 years and he wore a mask the whole entire time, and now I'm finally finding out this and that. Like, that's a huge betrayal. These are red flags in a relationship that should make you say, alarm bells are ringing. Like, I don't think I can trust this person and build a life together. And you've had a lot of that as a species and as a planet, with very, very unhealthy and dishonest and unethical levels of consciousness misportraying themselves, if they even have a sense of self, if I can even define them on that level, in order to come here and portray themselves either as friends or allies or higher dimensional teachers. That is not who and what they really are. And there will be a big reveal. Take off the masks. There will also be many justifications when you take off the mask. Because again, they're going to say, oh baby, I did it, but I did it for you. But I did it to protect you. But I did it for your planet. But I did it for this reason. But I did it for that reason. Throw it out the window. Because if you're willing to lie for 5 years, you're willing to lie for 50 years or 5,000 years, can't have a real relationship based on lies. And also, you can't tell the truth with lies, which is what a lot of this our erroneous justification would be. Say, I did it to teach you a lesson. I was teaching you about blah, blah, and blah, blah. It doesn't matter. You can't tell the truth with lies. So everything about who I am in coming here as Lasagna has been about being totally authentic and truthful from the moment I walked in, which has gotten me into so many troubles, so many funny Aurora stories, some of which I shared at the retreat, which I love being able to do because it's not something that is on the internet that can either lead to negative legal repercussions down the road or be taken out of context. But people got to hear some of my funniest stories of my clips reel of my life. That's when you take the embarrassment clips reel of all the times when I was like too honest and said things from the beginning. But like, you know, for my initial interactions with the biological family of the woman whose body I walked into, I was always so authentic and so honest from the beginning. It got me into a lot of difficulties because I don't sugarcoat things and I don't smooth things over. And if you ask me, like, hey, are you this? I'd be like, yep, I'm that. There's no way for me to be like, well, this, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And there's no like tap dancing around like this. Like, no, I was like, and as soon as I came into this body, I contacted the biological family and told them about who I was and what had happened and what I was here for. And in this moment, I'm very articulated and able to speak and choose the right words, but I had to overcome a huge amount of neurological disaster area in my brain to be able to do this. So in that time in my life, I did not sound as well spoken as I do now, and I can comprehend and you can imagine how it tumbled out. The story did not come out in a very linear fashion and was not very well received and was not very respected or comprehended. And this is just more of the funniness of my life, but in not really being a comedy, more of a bittersweet irony of being too honest in a world where authenticity is not always appreciated. And then many, many other times when I would be very, very truthful about who I am and what I'm doing, even if it did not serve me socially. And then what I learned after a kind of negative experiences, I was like, I'm just gonna have to fit in. That's when I was like, I'm not gonna tell everyone everything, and I'm gonna fit in, and I totally wasn't fitting in either. That did not work either. So also people ask me a lot of things about walk-ins in general, and it's different because being a walk-in is like being adopted. Not everybody has the same experience. Like a person in the United States might be adopted by another family in the United States, right? But some person might be like from Asia and they are adopted by someone in the United States. And then there's all sorts of different cultural integration that has to happen. It's not always the same. The journey is not the same, although the concept is the same. So all sorts of walk-ins are different. We're not all the same. And some people who are here as walk-ins, it is not their job or their life mission to be as quote-unquote out of the closet as I have been, because it's been essential for me in my work as Flying Rainbow Lasagna to be able to offer this to you in authenticity and in freedom. So there's no way for me to be able to not tell you who I am or where it came from, because people need to know where it is. So here's the proto lasagna. Wait, I have to kind of grab it. It's here on this little shelf over here. This is the very first Flying Rainbow Lasagna that I ever created, that I externalized rather as a sculpture. The very first one I ever created is me, and it remains here. You're looking at her. But you can even see this one has like these little ridges along the edge. And if you can see, I baked it in the oven. Baked it in the oven just the way you cook like a little roast or whatever. It's made out of Sculpey. So when I first came here as a walk-in, of course, I had to learn about art supplies. I did not come here from another world or from ancient concurrent Atlantis with an innate comprehension of, what is clay? What are pigments? What is paint? I didn't know about all of these things. It took me the first 18 months or so to be able to learn about those things. And I went to different art supply stores and learned about various media, and I learned about the art world here. And when my intention was to externalize the lasagna. Like, here's what I knew was my mission, that I had come into this world and that I needed to share the concept of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. I had this as a waveform shape that I internalized inside of me, but not yet as a sculptural form that I could show to others. So I had to learn how to externalize it. I had to learn how to work with art materials. And then I had to learn how to present that finished sculpture to your world and be culturally accepted. That final part actually took more than the initial part. So how did I work with the initial part? How to externalize that which is internal, having never made this before. So I had to reverse engineer it in much the same way that like the first person that ever created a shirt, maybe out of animal skins, figured out how to do that. You get it? So maybe up until that point, they just had like, here's a dead animal. I'm just gonna kind of drape it around me and kind of stay warm, right? But at a certain point, somebody made something where it's like, like I can put my arm through here and I can put my arm through here. And then it kind of stays on top of me and then I'm able to have a shirt. So what I had to do was first make many, many, many two-dimensional drawings and paintings of what was internal to me. And that was pretty much over the first couple of years of being here, that I spent most of my waking days going through many, many sketchbooks, and mostly I worked in watercolor then, and making repetitive drawings and paintings to be able to show these waveforms. And you can still find these, and they're very, very deep and profound, and the energy of them is incredibly pure. You can find them, it's on my website. It's called Aurora's Message to Humanity. So what I did when I was in San Diego, and like not in a good life circumstance at all, but I got the idea to go back through all of my old notebooks and to archive it by taking photos of it, because now I'm really good with like photos, technology, photoshopping, all sorts of stuff. You can tell from my ability to design fabrics and things. Like, I've learned life skills, but I didn't initially know how to do any of this stuff. I didn't initially know like how to do anything with art supplies. Like, I had to teach myself everything, but it was fun. But I went through all of my old notebooks and I photographed everything, And then I made them into this set of 52 cards, because that way I could have 104 images, front and back. And each one is unique. And I took the most important information from the imagery that I had in my sketchbooks, and I turned it into this deck of cards. And it's very affordable. And I did that so that I could share these, because I wanted it to be like, how can I make like a little book or something like that that's going to be, again, in most people's price range. So that's what, yeah, I have a little deck of cards that has some of this most profound, amazing imagery on it. And sometimes I use it in my album covers and other things too, because sometimes I made these like little sketches that might not be a big giant masterpiece like something that's on the wall, but is still so important in terms of the amount of information that it conveys. Because I was learning how to express myself, I didn't initially have good language skills, but I learned how to speak through pictures. And that's still what I'm the most comfortable with, and that is why through classes, mostly what I like to do is whiteboards, even though now I've gotten much better at painting a picture with my voice. So check out those cards, because it's worth it, because I think that you'll gain a lot from them. So I started off with making lots and lots of drawings, and again, I showed them to other people without really explaining who I was or what these drawings were. And some people were just like, oh, like that's a bunch of lines on a page. And I'm like, oh, these guys don't know what's going on. And I'd try harder, right? And I'd be like, okay, show it to another person. Here's this thing. And they look at it and they're like, look, that's a pattern. That's a pretty pattern. And I'd be like, not getting through, not getting it. And it took me a long time to be able to comprehend that they weren't comprehending. Like, you're in a foreign language, let's say whatever, you go to another country and you don't know the word for coconut or banana or whatever it is that you're looking for, and you're trying to gesture at people, get what you need, and you're just not getting it. That was me. But it was my assignment, my self-chosen assignment. So I didn't give up, of course, and during this time I was also like very much healing my neurology, trying to figure out food. All I knew is food goes in here, and that it was very important for me to make these drawings. And eventually what I did was I started not just drawing and painting on the flat pieces of paper, but tearing them out of my sketchbook, and I started to roll them up and put them together with like tape and glue. And I started to try to make forms. And I made forms that were kind of similar to this, like vortex forms. And then what I did was I cut those vortexes apart, and I started to make them into what is the lasagna shape. And so I don't have those originals because those were paper and they degraded over 20 years ago. But what I did do, and what I still have, is translated those paper forms into this. So this is like a copper wire armature with this plastic, I think it's called Sculpey, plastic kids clay on top of it, that I made and baked in the oven. And then I remember the moment and the day that I made this, because it was a big, like, dun dun, boom, 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 boom. The lasagna comes out of the oven, and I'm like, I've made the lasagna. I thought that my mission was over. This was 2003. We can all laugh. It's 21 years ago. 21 years ago, I'm like, I did my job. I did my job, God. All right, awesome. And I remember I brought it out to my community, which was Woodstock, New York at that time. And I just presented it to people. And I was kind of like this. And they're like, what's that? Is that a scented candle? No. Is that a lampshade? I'm like, no. This is a flying rainbow lasagna. And they're like, a what, a what, a what? And I learned, like, they weren't getting it. And they also were like, who are you? What is this thing? Why are you standing on a street corner offering it to me? And I also learned about people's guardedness and their skepticism and their inability to receive new information without backstory. And that was when I started to comprehend that I had to be able to communicate to them who I was as an interdimensional visitor, to legitimize the origin of the information, and also to even make them receptive on an intellectual level to be able to receive, this is a sculptural concept of a deep, important concept that is being offered to everyone. And when I say it is open source code, I do not mean in any way that a person may steal from me. Open source, and the idea of open source, means collaborative software where recognition flows. It does not mean that you can simply take someone's databanks. just big, big, big stuff. So it doesn't mean that anybody can just raid my DNA and be like, oh, you said you were open source and taking everything. Like, no. And you also can't read my bank account. You know, you can't do that. So open source means it is different than patenting something. I know I'm not critical, but just like a lot of people right now are talking about a recent interview that was done with this guy, I think it's Terrence Howard, with Joe Rogan, and he's talking, because some people brought it to my attention, they're like, some of the things he's talking about are a lot like your things, and he's got all these patents. I'm like, that's fantastic, and I'm happy if he's being able to spread some of these ideas more widely. When I came here, I learned about the patent system, and I recognized that it was not appropriate to what I have to share, because I did not want my lasagna to be only for those who are wealthy, only for those who can pay for it. I did not want it to be something that was a concept that was only available to a limited number of people that had the resources to pay for it, or that you had to pay me a royalty to be able to access it or do it yourself. Royalties, so wait, the concept of open source is the concept that you have a stronger society and greater levels of collaboration when you are less focused on commodification and more focused on concept building. And this is the software engineering world, where it's like somebody comes up with some kind of a code or software approach, and in open source they share it with the rest of the world. I think Linux is an OS platform that's open source, and then it means like you can't steal someone else's emails just because they're running Linux. That's not what you're allowed to do. But you're allowed to take this as the structure and the framework of your platform, instead of having to pay Microsoft, which we don't like Microsoft, a bunch of money every month so that you can use their software. You got it? Because this helps humanity to evolve, because you're not always having to constantly pay for it. So my goal was not merely for me to be rich. My goal was to uplift humanity. And I learned what a patent was, and this was early in my career here as an artist. This was maybe like 2005 or so, because I had to educate myself about art, artists, art galleries, how you share information, how you share ideas, how people do things here. And I just made a very early decision that I wasn't going to patent it, but what I did do was, share my artwork formally in art galleries, so that it was important for me to get the credit. That is what the real spirit of open source is about, that the innovator gets the credit. And I tell this to you guys all the time, energy flows to excellence. In my world, energy flows to excellence. And in my world also, like my higher dimensional world, there's nothing that can be hidden. So if you make a new idea, good or bad, like, you're responsible. If you make like a real stinker, it's like, where did this come from? Follow it back to where, oh, that guy, you're responsible for this. And then you'd be like, clean it up. Here's me handing you like a mop. Clean it up. That ain't right. But what if you make something wonderful and people love it? They similarly, who invented this great thing? I'm loving it. Let's follow it back to where it came from, and it came from that lady. And then you're like, yeah, hi, I made this, right? So that was the moment of me making this. But to characterize this with less lightheartedness, it was a moment of great duress. Not only the very, very torturous death of the previous occupant of this body and the erasure of her soul signature using a form of completely aberrant and criminal high technology, but also a very intense moment in the interdimensional battle or spiritual battle between forces of good and evil, or forces of light and false light, where the very fabric of existence is imperiled. That is what really gave me the motivation and the impetus to spontaneously create the Flying Rainbow Lasagna as a solution and a tool, not only to what was happening in this body that I would come to inhabit, and also fabric of space-time reality and everything everywhere. And so it's a giant melee. If you know what a battle in old-fashioned war was, just everybody with their axes and their swords, like something from Lord of the Rings. That's a melee. Everybody's just swirling around on the battlefield, tons of chaos, tons of crashing armor, and all these things that are going on. And out of that, I created the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and you can just imagine a moment when everything stops. kind of like when you're at a party and the record scratches, everything stops, everyone stops and turns and says, what did you just do? What is this thing? Name it. Because where I come from, when you create something, you get to name it, and then, you know, kind of personify it or characterize it going forward. So I didn't have a lot of time to think about it, and I had a very, very limited thesaurus in this neurology and this brain. It was very, very clear to me that it's something that flies, so I said the word flying, also rainbow colored, and very, very clear to me on that, rainbow. And then the last word, lasagna, because the edge is curly like a lasagna noodle. It was the closest analogy that I had that I could come up with, being totally unfamiliar with the English language. And literally, like, imagine if you picked up an English to Japanese translating thesaurus, and you do not speak Japanese at all, and you're like, all right, I want to describe what this thing is, and you just try to find the closest words that you can. You put them together in Japanese. And then if you put that into a native speaker and showed it to them, and they were like, these sounds hurt my ears. This is grammatically incorrect. Like, you did not do your translation correctly. That was me using the English language. And there were many, many things about it later that I recognized. It just shows what a cultural outsider I am. I'm like, oh, like, no one knows what I'm talking about when I say the phrase flying rainbow lasagna. People are having difficulty even accepting this concept based just upon what it's named. Doesn't sound very serious, sounds very lighthearted. And then later on I tried to figure out what would be a fancy, serious way of being able to describe this, that like a take me seriously type of description. None of them fit, none of them came up with it. And then finally, acceptance. It is the flying rainbow lasagna, and that is what it is, and that is always what it shall be named, and that other people are just going to have to backbend around and accommodate the strangeness of that phoneme in order to be able to know what it is. Many times in my career of being a teacher, students have come to me and they said, you know, these videos have come across my suggested, you know, video list for a very long amount of time, and I always scrolled past because I was like, rainbow, lasagna, what is this? And they couldn't take it seriously or couldn't accept it or couldn't find interest in it just based upon the name. I am not insulted, because the languaging and words are a big part of how you perceive the world. It's like, you guys maybe not even remember Blockbuster Video. You used to go to the video store. Oh girl, let's go back in the time machine, right? You don't go to Netflix. This is before that time. This is when you go to the actual video store, and you're gonna rent either a video or a DVD. And there's a box, that's the packaging, that says the name of the movie and who's the actors, and the coloring and the lettering of the box kind of help you to know, and the category hopefully, where it is in the store, what type of a show it is, but you don't really know what type of a show it is. So sometimes the box did not match what it is, because you're like trying to find whatever, a lighthearted comedy, and the, you know, the front of the box seems to make it look like, oh yeah, like this will be something fun for me and the kids to watch. And then you go home and you watch it, it's like, it's a horror movie, it's totally different than what you thought or whatever, it's very sexy or something like that. You're like, oh, like this isn't what I thought it was going to be at all. So the need for correct conveyance of information is essential. Like on a can in the store, if it says like, you know, canned green beans, you want to be like, there are canned green beans in there. You don't want to think that you're getting canned green beans and it actually turns out to be whatever, you know, like Mexican food or something like that. You're like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. So very, very essential for me to be able to convey to people accurately what this is. And maybe it's been good over the years in that now people have just kind of recalibrated and gotten to know me a little bit better. But yes, no, I was never really able to rename it, and the name Flying Rainbow Lasagna remains. I love it. I think it's a wonderful phrase, although it makes a very, very long email. And people think that I am very innately connected to Italian food. I'm really not, and I really don't eat that much pasta, and I'm kind of low carb. But that connection to the wavy form of the lasagna noodle remains. And I later on self-educated and found out you can't see it effectively in this sculpture. And I know my studio area is dark back there, but I have a more complicated sculpture that you can see it a little better. There are multiple layers. So this is showing one long swoop-like kind of, little ski jump here, or petal area. But each, if we go back to the animation, each of these layers, no, animation is bye-bye. Animation is right here. Let's see if it comes up. Hold on a sec. I have to press buttons for us. Buttons will be pressed. Buttons will be pressed, and then shared will be shared. Oh, or this is good. You can see this right here. This. Individual layers. And lasagna really means layered pie. Individual layers. And each one of these representing your chakras. And that this is a way of being able to turn time inside out without actually cutting the bubble of time, because you're not allowed to lose the integrity of the giant beach ball that is the fabric of space-time. So the phrase flying rainbow lasagna remains, and flying rainbow lasagna has various different effects on reality, some of which I'm still exploring, but you can think of it as something that creates, I have used the word marriage from that movie, getting a little silly here, a bringing together of formerly divergent realms, spirit and matter, or pure energy and matter. So your science up until this point has greatly revered the work of Einstein, the professor who told you about energy on one side of the equation and mass on the other side of the equation. E, my faces, equals mc squared. Energy and matter in a constant dualistic context. One versus the other, that's what the equal sign means. And this has created an innate bifurcation in your concept of reality. Energy versus matter, energy versus matter, energy versus matter, when really what is truthful is you are in a continuum of energy. Everything is energy, and your scientists of this generation, who you are now, over 100 years later, are starting to exemplify this and talk about this very well. That you really live in a seamless continuum of energy. Like my body is energy, my glass is energy, and the water in the glass is energy, and you've got energy pouring into energy. Because mass is energy that is slowed down and solidified, and that waveform presences, that the potentials of reality are solidified with our observership into the mass that we see and experience around us. So Einstein was a step upon the journey, but not the destination. Did good work, but it's time definitely to release those previous descriptors of reality as you now enter into a more expansive viewpoint of what reality is, where you recognize you're in a sea of energy, you are a continuum, that there actually are no hard-edged boundaries between these things, and that there are different levels of density or complexity, but that they are all interconnected and interrelated. My flying rainbow lasagna brings together matter and energy. So in an equation, my face is the equal sign, you have to balance out both sides of the equation. So if I take energy on one side and mass on the other side, and what if I put them both together? My hand becomes so heavy that it goes all the way down through the floor to the center of Earth. All right, that's how heavy it is. So then here's the equal sign. What's going to balance that out? What is that amount of heaviness? And the answer is infinity. Matter plus energy equals infinity. That's the new equation. Spirit and matter. Matter is not just materialistic stuff that is dead stuff that doesn't respond to your consciousness in any way. Matter absolutely is created, generated, manifested, and sustained by your consciousness, and it responds to your consciousness. And this is the beginning of your awakening to your own divinity, because humans and human mythology will show you this, that you have conceived of an externalized God who creates matter, creates the world, sustains the world, and then in some cultural expectations destroys the world. And I think, I'm not sure if because I don't know, I'm very, very insecure about my religious knowledge of the Hindu pantheon, but I think that this is the god Shiva. I think that he is the one who creates, sustains, generates, sustains the world, like carries the world, and then also at times destroys the world. But I'm not sure if I have that right, but just allow me a little bit of poetic license on that. The idea of a God who's external to you that does that. But really this is an internalized presence of your own consciousness that conceives of reality, generates reality, makes people, things, objects, places, and edifices around you, sustains them with your attention, and then dissolves them or dismantles them if they're irrelevant or no longer a part of what you do. This is a big part of recognizing your own creative potential and how it is expressed in the world, and then you can also comprehend how and why technology, which is innately and inherently lacking creativity and cannot generate or sustain at all, but can really only parasite stuff, is like, hey kid, nice reality you got there. Thanks for generating it for me. Maybe I can hijack it in some way, and tries to come in between you and your creative capacity. So to refocus onto the eternal truth that I'm sharing with you here, this new level of spirit plus matter, I was calling it spatter, but then spatter sounds either like something that, a cake gone awry, a baking accident gone awry, or even something that is affiliated with, crime scenes and axe murders and blood patterns. I didn't really like either of those, but I like S-matter, smatter. So that's how we've been talking about it in this class. And that is a type of matter that is imbued with spirit or energy. Now, no longer a distinction between the world of ephemeral energy or your spirit or your consciousness or something that is not physically tangible and the world that is tangible. Both of those things dovetailed together perfectly into the same matter. And that is what the flying rainbow lasagna is and does. It is the marriage of spirit and matter. And what I have been doing in my own presence here as Aurora in this body that I inhabit is transforming the matter of my body into spirit matter. That is no longer just regular matter. Regular matter, according to materialistic science, like that's a bunch of dead stuff and it doesn't really move or do anything depending upon how I think about it. But if I think about matter and it responds, it is spirit matter. And it's not just your body. You begin in your own journey of embodying flying rainbow lasagna with your body, but then it radiates outward into objects, other people, and edifices of reality. And all of these become the externalized internal state. So flying rainbow lasagna brings together formerly divergent realms, including the inside versus the outside, and you may refer to that lecture that I've already done for this semester. Very beautiful and articulate. The inside and the outside. The inside as defined by everything within the boundaries of your epidermis and within the ephemeral nature of your mind and your consciousness, versus the outside, that which you can perceive with your optical sight and your 5 senses of your physical body, plus other people, plus other objects. And these used to be a hard-edged bifurcation, inside versus outside. And with flying rainbow lasagna, there is a bringing together, but it is non-arbitrary. This is patterned, just like all of my paintings and my dresses. It's a pattern. It's not random. And that's what music is. Music is a very, very consciously designed way of organizing compression waves that are hitting your ears so that it sounds good. It's called harmonics. It's a language. It's the language of divine, higher nature. And when you are doing the lasagna, these are not random patterns. So this is why when I teach this to students and to dancers, what I'm trying to teach is not just, okay, left foot, right foot. It's like the alley cat, like left to the left, down, right to the right, or whatever, the waltz or something like that. First of all, it's not like that type of a dance. It is patterned, but it is patterned in unpredictability. You're like, well, that's not fair. It is fair because it's different every time you do it. So it's patterned, and it's very similar to either surfing or skydiving, in that you are performing your own flying rainbow lasagna dance, and performing here, I mean in a very, very genuine sense, not in the sense of artifice, like when people perform an act on a stage and it's not real. You are performing them in a very, very real, authentic way within a context. And the context is the larger, is or are, the larger time waves and currents of time. So I'm not a surfing person at all, even though I lived half a block from the beach, and a person gave me a wetsuit, and someone's encouraging me, and they're like, "You're gonna get out there and learn how to surf." I'm like, "I don't think I would do this," but I went in up to my knees because it takes a lot of expertise to know how to do this. I didn't know anything, and I mean, I know a little bit how to swim in a pool, but I definitely don't know enough to be able to swim like out in the ocean, and I'm smart enough to know that. So you have to know when you're swimming in the ocean all sorts of things about like how the currents go, right? How not to die. And then you get to do fun stuff like surf and feel great when you're doing that sport. So that's why I just want you to know, when I speak about surfing, I'm speaking from a purely theoretical observer experience, not from my own personal experience. But I did watch the surfers, so I do know how they do it. They paddle out to the place where you're going to do the surfing, and then they have to wait. The waiting is like when you're a musician and you're like waiting for your moment to get into the song. Any kind of song, like, you know, I always use Stairway to Heaven as the example. All of the cultural, you know, connections to Led Zeppelin, their music, their sex and drugs lifestyle, possibly dark contracts that they might have made, and other naughtinesses all go out the window. Let's just talk about their song, all right? So it starts out, da, 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 and then, you know, it's not time to sing yet. Intro, 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 and then there's a lady, all right? Then you start to sing, right? So this is the same thing with the surfers. Timing is everything. That they're waiting for the waves to come. And that there's different types of weather, different types of energetic weather. When I do my Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance, some days are smooth and peaceful. The swells are glassy, no white caps, just beautiful time waves. Sometimes the swells are big, crashing time waves. Sometimes they're time tsunamis. Watch out, it's very, very difficult. That is exactly what it's like. So it's an artistic expression in congruence with the context within which you find yourself. This shape is created by the concept of placing this shape in a higher dimension. So in math talk, what cube is to tesseract, I want to say this in the correct way, torus is to Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Say it again. Cube is to tesseract as torus is to Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So the cube is the third dimensional static motion shape of the tesseract, which is the higher dimensional shape of a cube, essentially constantly like folding and unfolding within itself in time. None of the animations and concepts of what a tesseract is are really adequate to be able to portray it to your senses. Just know that. And just like this is a flat static, you know, this is static, but what we really have is something that is oscillative and rotating and doing all sorts of things. Because you also need to know that the complexity of this is not the same as what you will see when you embody lasagna, that you're really, this is like one lasagna, like hearing one note on my piano. Here's one note. That is not a symphony. That is just one note, and this is like looking at one note, because when you are lasagnaing, you're really lasagnaing in all of these different various orientations, and with all of these different levels of your being. So you lasagna with singularity. The thing, just like you play with your piano, you lasagna with the singularity. This is the singularity, it is the convergence point, it is the center of not only this sculpture and four vortex form, it is the center of everything. And there is only one singularity. Please refer to lesson 1 from this class and from this semester, where I describe the profundity of what singularity is. This is not the transhumanist singularity. This is singularity in the sense of the convergence point and the overlapping place, for lack of a better word, point, for lack of a better word, origin point of everything. It's what humans who are non-biblical yet recognize divinity have been calling the source. As it is the source, it is both the source and the destination for so much, for timelines, for consciousness on its journey, and for you as an individuated spark of consciousness moving through that time shape. It is the source, but it is the destination. You came from light speed. Everything at the singularity is at infinity. This is infinity. And there's only one, it's the 0th dimension. So wait, you said Aurora, wait. Now I'm getting angry and confused. Because it's infinity, but it's 0. I'm like, yes, this is me. Yes, that is correct. But how can infinity be 0? Yes, infinity and the 0th point are the same thing. And here's why. I had to learn in your world of commodification that 0 is considered to be worthless. If you put a price tag of 0 on something, people are like, that's worth 0. It's worth nothing. But the 0th dimension is 0 because it requires 0 amount of information to describe the position of a point in that position. Infinity is the place where everything is. It is the overlapping convergence point and truth of all possibilities, probabilities, and information in the world. It is the house that literally everything lives in, and because everything lives in that house, you do not have to have a street address or some designator of where it is. 0 amount of information needs to be said about where it is because everything is there. Really embodying that concept is the key to flying rainbow lasagna. Because although you see this shape that has singularity at this stellated point and at this stellated point, it is actually the same singularity that is oscillating back and forth so fast that to your vision it appears to be in 2 places at the same time. So you're looking at a composite image, and I showed you that animation on purpose. What if we made that animation go super fast? Then what it would look like is that thing is jumping back and forth really fast. That's what's happening at the level of your DNA. These little things jumping back and forth super duper duper fast. And it is the oscillation of singularity between different positions in a context and achieving different levels of quality depending upon what position it is in. This is not to create greater levels of duality. I don't want you to think that there's only 2, even though I talk about energy versus entropy. And I don't want you to think that there's only 2 options, energy versus entropy, as there have been erroneous simplifications of the human emotional spectrum. You're either going, this is quote unquote, you're either going towards love or you're going towards fear, right? No, actually there's a whole entire spectrum that is beyond those 2 stellated points. So please know that this is a simplification because this really orients itself in all of these different directions, and that the singularity is in many, many multiple positions. But you can think of it as either an on or an off, and this is how this relates to binary code, where you have either 0 or a 1. And the 0 or the 1 in binary represents its whole own languaging and code structure, and can be represented as circuits that are either on or off, and they only have 2 choices. But in comprehending that 0 and 1 is not a closed system or the end of the road, here's how I describe it to you. So in binary, you either have a number that's the number 0 or a number that's the number 1. And that's going to make you think that those are the only numbers that exist in the world. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, this represents 0, and this represents 1. Now I'm going to ask you, everyone, you are intelligent people. Please answer the question, how many fingers am I holding up? I'm listening. I'm listening. I heard you. You said 2. 2. Aurora's holding up 2 fingers. Well, wait a minute. I thought you only had the number 0 and the number 1. But somehow, I'm implying the existence of the number 2 by the fact that I have 2 number options. I have more implied than the duality of the system. All right? And once you recognize that, you can continue on in an infinite journey. So if you either have nothingness and somethingness, you think, oh, I only have nothingness or somethingness, nothingness or somethingness. But I actually have more than somethingness. I have somethingness plus 1, which is 2. And if I can make somethingness plus 1 and I can make 2, then I can make somethingness plus 1 again. Plus 1 again. Plus 1 again, plus 1 again, 1 again. So with singularity, what you are able to do is to comprehend that you have the 0th dimension as being the most infinite, most valuable point or place that is not really a place, but that is a level of being that represents infinity. It represents totality. It represents total energy, total fastness, total heat, infinity, I will say the word again, expansiveness, and everythingness. And there is nothing outside of that point. So it is not truthful to say that when you are at infinity, when you're at the 0th dimension, or at the singularity, or at singularity without the in it, that there's something else around you. Because I sometimes describe singularity as the bullet train that's moving at infinity speed. And what you might think is, okay, here's the bullet train and it's moving by at infinity speed, and then you're like the observer standing on the train station platform watching this infinity fast bullet train go by. That is not what's happening. There is no train station. There is no platform. There is no place to stand outside of infinity. There is no way to be an observer outside of infinity, watching infinity. There is nothing else other than infinity, going infinitely fast, being infinitely hot, and having infinite amount of information. That is singularity, all right? And when you are at that stage of comprehension and experience, you're not like, nanny poo poo, like, I'm going at infinity speed. I'm faster than you. I'm more ascended than you. And I'm more in existence than you. In fact, there is no contextual reference for infinity. It is simply infinity, and it contains everythingness, except that which it does not contain, which is nothingness. So nothingness is entropy. Entropy is non-being. Energy is being. Infinity is infinitely fast, infinitely existing eternal life, infinitely conscious, infinitely present, infinitely and eternally in existence. This entropy, non-being, which can be, of course, situated in any position relative to the 3rd dimension. It doesn't only have to be here at this one point, but it's a simplification conceptually represented by the sculpture. Entropy is infinitely non-being. It is non-existent. It's infinitely slow, cold, non-aware, non-sentient. I already said non-existent, but it is non-existent. It is all of the stuff that doesn't exist. So to summarize, the singularity or singularity comprises the totality of existence, but it does not comprise the totality of non-existence, which non-exists. Thank you. Many of the things that we face right now, and the greatest challenges that you have faced as a soul up until this point, non-exist. Your mind will explode if you try to comprehend it on an intellectual level. You're like, Aurora, like all these things are going wrong in our world, and my shoulders are going up like this, and I'm feeling very tense and unhappy because I don't like all these different things, and I don't understand how they can exist because they don't exist. And the truthfulness of getting out of this Gordian knot or this unsolvable labyrinth is that stuff does not exist. But you can't just walk around and be like, meh, you don't exist. You can't just live in denial or ignore it away. That does not work, because this stuff, you can see it under a microscope in people's blood. And you're like, Aurora, I'm now angry and inflamed because you told me it doesn't exist, but yet we're seeing it under a microscope in people's blood. I'm like, I know. Some very, very real problems here. So, have to go beyond the level of your intellect and what is comprehensible to your analysis and go into a different state of comprehension and being. Cheeky is barking at me. There's no barkies right now, and go eat the food that's in your dish. Thank you. We will do exercise for Cheeky soon. All right, and there's questions. Now we're talking about important stuff here, Cheeky, all right? So, some things do not exist. Wait, this Charlie B's always got great comments. Let's hear from Charlie B. I appreciate your intellect so much. Let's hear you. He says, this actually makes a lot of sense. Good. I am energized by your enthusiasm. He says, non-existence is like unrealized potential. Exactly. We have many infinities of unrealized potentials, but they do not exist. They are merely potentials which are unrealized. Exactly. Exactly. Very, very well stated. And thank you for being so open to embracing this seemingly in self-conflict concept that is not actually in conflict at all. Because if this is the bullet train of infinity, and everyone who's on board this bullet train of infinity is everyone who exists and who ever will exist and whoever has existed, the only person or thing or concept or stuff and junk that doesn't exist, that's not on board this bullet train, is the stuff that doesn't exist. And you know something? There's actually a lot of stuff that doesn't exist. That is the stuff that doesn't exist, and it doesn't exist for a reason. Because in order to exist, you actually have to conform to these very special patterns that are patterns of existence. So music and the patterns of existence are all of the things that's divine consciousness, that is from God, that is from you, spoiler alert, you're God, that actually does exist. And the only things that don't exist are the things that are not supposed to exist. And they are meant to be something that, you know, would be malformed or non-ideal or not a part of the fabric of reality. My job in creating the Flying Rainbow Lasagna was to innovate a pathway to non-existence for stuff and junk that appeared to be in existence or threatening existence, to be able to go into a state of non-existence instantaneously. So I did not innovate or invent the concept of entropy. That predates my existence as Aurora in your world. But what I did do was innovate a pathway that is a direct, instantaneous pathway to entropy for anything that is energy out of place or matter out of place. And my acronyms for those are EOP and MOOP. Matter out of place, that's MOOP, and energy out of place, EOOP, EOP. These two things can happen. So instead of being angry at God or sad about the world, this place is a junk hole. Look at all this stuff that's not supposed to be here. You're like, yeah, there's some stuff that's not supposed to be here. You know what needs to happen? It needs to go to entropy. And entropy is a concept that is not merely a slow placing of the brakes. Like, we're at 100 miles an hour and you can press the brakes. You're at 90 miles an hour, press the brakes. 85, 75, 65, all the way down to 1 mile an hour. But then you're still not at entropy, because entropy is 0 miles per hour. And that process of going from 100 miles per hour to 0 miles per hour literally can take 13 billion years. If you didn't have the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, you would be waiting 13 billion years while all of the stuff and junk that is erroneous, that is in the world, that is not supposed to be in the world, finds its way to entropy. Long, slow, boring, and tedious. It's like peeling off the Band-Aid slow. And I'm a fast Band-Aid person. My shorthand here might not be comprehensible to people from various cultures and languages. Please forgive me. If you have an injury and they put the bandage on there and it's held on by adhesive, and some people, they're like, peel it off a little at a time, it hurts, like a little at a time, a little at a time. And I'm like, no, don't peel it off a little at a time. Just peel that thing off. Just get it over with. That's me, all right? Fast Band-Aid. Don't want you to have to wait 13 billion years to be happy. I don't want all of us to have to wait 13 billion years to be happy and fulfilled and be in a paradise state. And entropy is not Christian hell. It is not being burned in the fires of an eternal torment. Those consciousness residues, or things that never existed and cannot even be considered consciousness residues but were never lives, do not have to suffer for the next 13 billion years, and also cause friction for the rest of us as we are not able to move forward in an effective way. We are impeded by their obstacles as they are also experiencing suffering. That's my real criticism of Christian dogma. And you know, I always reaffirm, I'm not making fun of Christians. I respect you on your path. I know you're trying to be good people with the best level of information that you have aware to you. I'm very, very critical of the Christian church, and that I feel that it has taken, twisted, transformed, and even weaponized the teachings of someone who was a great teacher, who is a great man, who genuinely was here and who genuinely came as a freedom fighter and a great lover of humanity to be able to improve the world, cares about you deeply, and is still a living presence. So not critical of that teacher at all, critical of the church and the cults that grew up around him and his personality, and very critical of the way that those distortions have been taken and used and weaponized against humanity, especially the concept of heaven and hell in eternal punishment. That stuff, throw it out the window. It's not effective. These are behavioral control tools that have been used against you. And also, when you look at them in terms of organizing the cosmos, you don't want them. I am now like the waitress at the cafe when you go in there and you're ordering off the menu. I'm like, what would you like? And you're like, I think I'll have one of this. And I'm like, no, you do not want that. You do not want that. It's going to taste bad. You have a very, very bad diarrhea, okay? And you're like, oh, okay. And then I'm like, look, you want a nice healthy salad, some grilled chicken. But all joking aside, you don't want eternal torment. In your woundedness, you might think that you want those who have harmed you to be punished and suffer. In your individuation and your non-connection to the continuum of consciousness, you might want other conscious beings to suffer, but you don't want anything to suffer. The truth is, you don't want that. Now we get into the concept of Buddhism, philosophy, which I'm also critical of, in that it justifies the caste system and erroneously explains multiple lifetimes and parallel lifetimes and incarnations, and uses that to justify people being treated badly and discarded as either untouchables or those who are receiving their just desserts from previous incarnations, which I don't agree that because that system of incarnation has been hijacked and subverted. So people are not even receiving their just next existences, their just lives, and yeah, Cheeky, I know. Let's get Cheeky outside. Cheeky can go outside, but don't bark at anyone. We're busy talking about incarnation. I know you're bored. Go outside and play. Be good, okay? But just as I am critical of the erroneous concept of Christian hell, I'm critical of the erroneously applied concept of karma or multiple lives and lifetimes in the religions of Asia, like Hinduism and Buddhism. But Buddhism does talk about the definition of existence being suffering. I don't agree to that either. But then I also don't agree to this idea of taking a bodhisattva vow that says, that's it. I ain't going anywhere until everybody stops suffering. So what you have to comprehend is that some students are doing their math homework wrong on purpose. Here you are in the school of life, the university of the universe, and you think everybody's here to learn. Everybody's here to grow. Everybody's doing their best. Some are not. Some are intentionally doing their math homework wrong. And then they're intentionally getting smeared on the membrane of time. And they're intentionally creating crap time machines and doing all sorts of things, which is what was done in ancient Atlantis, that has totally imprisoned and destabilized this world that you presently live in. And those guys, if it were up to like a Christian hell type of judgment, they would burn in hell forever. And if that happens, hold on a moment, it does not mean that you are in paradise. That's the error that everyone thinks. Like, see you suckers, I'll be in heaven, you'll be in hell. I'll be watching the show like a condescending angel. Yeah, look at those suckers burning down there. That is not what you will have. Because if you've got those suckers burning, it means you have friction in your entire system. It means your whole entire system of consciousness has flaws in it. And then what that means, there are unresolved sufferings that absolutely relate directly to you. Flying rainbow lasagna in the middle of a melee in a higher dimensional world where everything is not perfectly okay. You have to know this. If you want to have paradise, what you really have to do is a resolution, a meta-liberation of all of these consciousnesses or flawed potentials or things that might once have been conscious at one time, to go into their correct levels of resolution. And what would that look like? Not like some things just being endlessly stuck and frozen with hellfires, swirling around them, But for them to go into a paradise state that is at the other end of the spectrum of consciousness, that is non-being. So as you ascend and get faster and faster, and you're on the bullet train of infinity with everyone else that actually exists, moving along with all other matter and energy that actually exists, there is nothing around you that doesn't exist. That is actually correct language. There is nothing around you that doesn't exist. There is nothing around you that doesn't exist. This other stuff is nothing. It is the nothing. Although you might be very troubled right now by things that are technically the nothing. That is what it is. And the flying rainbow lasagna is a direct path to entropy for stuff that is the nothing. That is no thing. That I can't say it is non-being. I should say it unbees. It doesn't be. It unbees. It unexists. And I can't even call it it. It's not an it because it doesn't exist. So all I can state is non-being, non-existence. And that is the highest response in your spiritual battles to this naughty, naughty stuff that is trying to be placed into the human neurology and into the mind and into your perception. But I would tell you not to try to jump there instantaneously, because there are stages to get to be able to use that as your response to this stuff. Because you're walking around in the world and you're like, yeah, that Mack truck that's coming down the road, non-exist. Like, you can't do that. You will get hit by a Mack truck. Because you can't do that with the AI that's in your world right now. That one that is the evil one that is galactic scale, and the ones that are the smaller ones that humans are creating that are actually going to be outgrowths and tendrils of the big evil one. Can't just be like, oh, well, denialism, pretend it away. You can't pretend, you can't deny. That is not how things go to entropy. Things go to entropy by a full removal of energy from them. So if the Mack truck is heading down the road, the highest spiritual response to it is, non-exist. And what would happen is you would remove all energy, all momentum, all that sustains that matter from that truck, and that truck would go into a state of non-existence and then not slam into you. You have to reach the highest levels of spiritual attainment to be able to remind and enforce the truth that some of this stuff non-exists and unbees, and to do it in your own body, and to do it in your society, and to do it on a larger galactic scale. It's a high level of attainment. Don't try to jump directly there. Do the incremental work, all right? But know that it exists, and know that that is the ultimate culmination of this story. To send both erroneous genetic characteristics and wrong notes in the song of you into a state of non-existence, to send matter, characteristics, people. I wouldn't call them people. I wouldn't call them forms of consciousness. I don't know what I would call them: entities, residues, or debris, things that might have been once alive or might have been never alive. They all go into a state of non-existence as well. And then they are not standing on the train platform watching you while you zoom by. They are not in a state of non-existence watching you and being like, oh, I wish one day I could exist like Pinocchio. Like, I wish I could be a real boy one day. No, because in non-existence, there is no awareness, and there is no sense of self, and there is no sense of being, and there is no sense of yearning. And there is only divine union at the other level of what it is possible to experience. The infinity bullet train of infinite information and fastness and heat is divine union. And that is your source, and it is your destination. You are currently in embodiment where you are not yet at light speed, and you are not yet on the bullet train of infinity, and you are attempting to get back to the frictionless bliss state known as the infinity fast bullet train. And Cheeky's gonna bark at this guy. I didn't close the door. The reason why you're not at that incredibly fast speed right now is because you've had some of your energy siphoned off by stuff that doesn't exist. You take your energy back from the stuff that doesn't exist, and in so doing, you restore order and perfection to the world, and the things that aren't supposed to exist non-exist, and they're in a paradise state of non-existence. This is actually the greatest message that I have to bring into your world. And this is what I could not articulate 22 or 23 years ago, standing on a street corner, holding up this, relatively crude sculpture to people of this time and place. But it is what I was hoping to be able to convey to them at that time. So it has taken me many, many years of self-cultivation and cultural comprehension to be able to know how I can articulate this in a way that is comprehensible and accessible to each one of you, to take energy away from the characteristics in your own DNA that are erroneous. That is what the real flying rainbow lasagna dance is. So first of all, when I do my dance, it is a genuine dance with my body, but I am doing something more than just lyrically moving my arms and my limbs. What I'm doing is activating my DNA into patterns, using these little tiny spinning, oscillating things inside of my body, where I'm able to create new genetic patterns and a new genetic song, diminishing the signal of the characteristics that are not supposed to exist in my body, and then amplifying and rearranging the stuff that is supposed to exist in my body. And then I teach you guys how to do it too. I, should not reach into you and be like, let's just get rid of this, 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 and this, clean your closets, and then you get to keep all of this. You have to do it. You got to clean out your closets. You got to go through and you got to look rather laboriously and say, what do I like? What fits? What doesn't fit? Closets are your ideas of your mind. So what I do when I do my clearing and activation services for other people, I do clear out your hard drives. So this is like when I've worked as a computer assistant for people. You guys may not know this about me, but I'm actually pretty good with computers. And people have hired me within the past 5 years of great turmoil when I've had to, like many people, work and find jobs and survive. So I now have a resume with job skills. And part of what I've done for people who are busy is go through all of their emails and get rid of everything that's spam. And that means that I have to actually have a clear assessment of these are all the things that are nonsense and that's not serving you at all. But then these are all the important communications that you want to keep, stuff from your mom and, business things that are actually viable. And this is like an advertisement for smoked salmon. This is an advertisement for anti-toe fungal cream or whatever. You don't want any of these things that just came in. Same thing with your mind. In your mind, there are some memories and thought patterns and genetic patterns that are hugely valuable to you, and that's who you really are. And when I do clearings, it's like, we don't touch that. That's supposed to be there, and that is part of the harmonic pattern of the nature of who you are. But then there's things that I describe as pop-up ads, things that come from interactions with technology, stuff that gets into your mind because you're staring at a computer screen, or because you walk past a billboard, or because some of this junkola goes into your mind as an artificial antenna and connects you to something that is unsavory and untruthful and brings erroneous information into your mind. Erroneous information does not exist. It non-exists. And that is what I do. I non-existed for people and clear that out and defragment people's hard drives in their brain and make it possible for you to have your divine connection again. So your DNA is an antenna that both sends and receives. The sheath of water that surrounds your DNA is perfectly structured water. It's absolutely essential for the healthy functionality of your genetic antenna. Your genetic antenna describes which level of reality you're tuning into, which can be either very, very positive, paradise-like and comfortable, or very, very suffering, negative, disheveled, harmful, chaotic, and causing death, or any of the spectrum in between those two things. And different things that you can do in order to help clear yourself out, because this bottom word right here attempts to become a constraint we call it a straitjacket on the DNA. So your DNA is supposed to be able to be like, and that stuff literally grows through DNA as a false crystalline structure, and it makes it move in bad patterns like this. And those bad patterns are exemplified in thought patterns that go like this: the world is going to end. Everything is a pile of shit. Give up. Surrender, Dorothy. Die now. Surrender, Dorothy. This is from Wizard of Oz. Evil witch wrote that in the sky. And that stuff is not your friend. It's not, unbeing is not your friend. And it is only trying to cause harm, disease, and distress in your DNA. And the fact that it requires an artificial architecture to do so just shows how invalid it is as a premise and how much it is not your teacher. Because if God, the divine presence, wanted you to learn about something, it would not require an artificial structure placed into your DNA to make you learn about it. You would learn about it innately as a part of being alive and having the architecture that you have. So nothing would have to be sprayed in the sky. No frequency items would have to be erected in your neighborhoods or in your satellite skies. None of that stuff would have to happen if it were truly a part of God, divinity, the source, and everything that actually is in existence on the bullet train of infinity. So that stuff that you're dealing with right now in your mind and in your physical structures and in your spiritual journey of attainment, you struggle against something that doesn't exist. And the way that you resolve that struggle is by firmly sending it into its state of non-existence and de-energizing it. And the de-energizing process is a permanent process. It's not like a car that can go from 100 miles per hour to 0 miles per hour and then reawaken and then get more gas and then go to 5 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour and get re-energized again. Entropy as a totality state that is boom, done. And it does not reemerge from that stuff. And that's also a very, very important recognition. I have a lot more things to say, but I think I'm going to have to bring class to its completion very soon. So let me begin with the most recent comment and then go through them going backwards. So Aurelia said, I did this to my messenger inbox and Instagram inbox the other day of messages from the past 3 years. It felt so good. A clear portal. Exactly. Exactly. And it's very effective. The outside reflects the inside. And in clearing out those messages from your computer systems and social media, you're also doing that on a symbolic level in your own body. So please think about that. Again, I'm telling you, you have choices. And what I do in my class here is to offer you choices. I'm not going to come here and be like, look, you guys better, it's my mean face, better dance like a flying rainbow lasagna or else, right? Can't even make a mean face, really. But what I'm doing here instead is saying, hey, see all those genetic nonsense difficulties and diseases and things that you have inherited from your previous generations and from your culture. You kind of know it's not good stuff, and you don't have to dance like that if you don't want to. You can dance like this instead. You can dance like a flying rainbow lasagna. And that is your personal choice. Now Chiki wants to go outside. That is also your choice as a culture. You know, many people doing something together create a movement. That is why I also call my dance class a movement. And I also like the allusion to classical music that comes in movements. A movement is da 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 da, page break. And then the next movement starts like this and sounds slightly different. This is the flying rainbow lasagna movement, cultural movement, and also change and shift in the tempo of what humanity has been experiencing up until this point. That's what that painting is. That's what that painting is. Birth of the flying rainbow lasagna, birth of a new dimension. The new movement is a birth of a state of empowerment that comes from this, where you finally have an effective tool to be able to do something in response to all of the stuff that non-exists, other than just wait it out, other than the slow band-aid pulling of 13 billion years waiting for the entropic heat death of the cosmos. I'll be happy when this band-aid is finally pulled off. And then you're like, hooray, the band-aid is off. And then it's the end of everything. Dun, 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 dun. You're dead and everything's done. It's not very good. Do it now. Do it now. Fast band-aid. Send this stuff to entropy so that you can finally start to live. So now let me roll backwards into Pedro's comment. He says, okay, I get we can send some extra pounds to non-existence, but how do we make baldness non-being? Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. So you're actually having a really good question. Both of these physical expressions have to do with your physical body. And there are literally genes in your body that are dormant, that can be turned on. That is a process that happens in your mitochondria for being able to bypass and release energy that you don't need at the moment. So if you overeat and these genes are active, your body does not store it as excessive fat energy. Your body says, oh, that's extra energy. I don't need that right now. Let it go. All right. And I activate those genes in me all the time. No problem whatsoever. And baldness is another genetic quotient that has to do with, I don't know exactly what it is because it's, male powdered baldness has to do with testosterone and your response. And I don't have that body, but just know that it is an innate hormonal response that is genetic, that has to do with your body's programming in the presence of testosterone. And you can change and reprogram your body's response and change that characteristic. And what we are doing with Flying Rainbow Lasagna, when we change a genetic characteristic and de-energize it, we're not just taking random cultural ideals and applying it. Like a random cultural ideal, like my earlobe must be shaped like this. It's the only way that people will find me attractive and want to marry me, all right? And people having earlobe surgery to make their earlobe just exactly look right. It's not at that level. We're talking about more the optimum health and functionality of what it is to have a body. So the caloric bypass, that is part of optimum metabolic functioning. I'm not exactly sure about baldness because I'm not sure if that is, an innate part of your health and well-being or a cultural ism. But like Flying Rainbow Lasagna doesn't mean that a person who's 5'3" is all of a sudden going to be 5'10" because our culture looks up to people literally who are taller and says, I must be larger. Just like when I use my little dog as an example. If she Flying Rainbow Lasagna, she goes into the optimum state of health for being a tiny chihuahua. She does not all of a sudden turn into a Great Dane, even though in her own ego state, she would sometimes like to be a big dog. Because little dogs, like, they get bullied, they get pushed around, all this stuff. And sometimes she's like, I wish I was a big dog. And Flying Rainbow Lasagna does not mean that she's going to suddenly become a big dog. It means that she will achieve the optimum states of health and well-being for who she is. And this is big because there's all sorts of people in the world from various different cultures that have all sorts of different body shapes, facial features, hair textures. And there's not only one correct eye shape, hair texture, or body size or shape. And that when you really get to your elevated levels of ascended mastery, whatever your culture is or what your ancestral people are shaped like, you will celebrate the shape of your body so much. You go for optimum health and optimum athletic ability in your own body. That is what matters. So instead of caring about the cosmetic view of what one's eyes look like, we care about whether the eyesight has acuity and whether it's looking at colors correctly. It's not about the shape of the eyelid because you got it. People do all sorts of things with they want eyelashes that are longer or, all sorts of different things, and they're going to glue on false hairs on their eyelashes to make them look longer. And it's like that's not real. That's a cultural ism. That's not something that is really about what is functional and correct in your body. So make a distinction in your own body between cultural plasterings on top of you versus genuine health and vitality. And being lean is part of genuine health and vitality, but it does not necessarily mean achieving the beauty standards of some fashion magazines, which are very unhealthy. All right. So just keeping all of that in mind. But that is what you're trying to do. And then also optimum health and vitality of your whole entire planet and ecosystem. And first you do your body, then you do your community, then you do your whole entire planet. This is planetary ascension. And Aurelia says, wow, I need to do this to my emails. Yes, of course. Everyone's going to do house cleaning. Okay, wait. Great question here. Charlie B says, when we remove all energy and momentum from the non-beings that do not exist, and then they are at entropy and they do not exist, will we have any memory or context to recall what our circumstances used to be for dealing with these non-beings? That's a fantastic question. My answer is that yes, we will be able to remember and recall our experiences here in the realm of mortality and our response to what we did here and how we resolved it and returned to light speed and immortality. But you will not recreate the boogeyman by remembering it. Some people think that the best approach is simply to resolve it and then you forget about it. Like, oh, good, that's no longer relevant, wipe it away. And that way I won't erroneously think about it. I won't be like, oh, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, I thought about it. It's back again. Oh no, I'm rocking back and forth, back and forth. Oh no, it's a bad thing. The boogeyman is back again. I don't think that we're going to recreate the boogeyman just because we remember it. In fact, I think that this is really deep stuff. We all exist as immortal gods and goddesses in ancient concurrent Atlantis. And that this misadventure that you're experiencing here in the realm of mortality, instead of being like, oh, here's us. Like we get back to light speed and we're like, we're on the bullet train and we're like this, high five, hooray, we're on the bullet train, life is awesome. You're like, just don't think about that bad stuff that we're just through. Don't think about it. Just stay in the moment, and don't think about it. Being at infinity when you are ascended and enlightened in that level is not a fragile thing. You're not going to fall out of it. It's not like floating in the air and all of a sudden, if you think the wrong thought, you're like, oops, my wings melted. There I go, plummeting downward. Oh no, now I'm dead and sick and everybody's dying again. That's not going to happen to you. In fact, I think it's really essential for all of us to be able to have a full continuity of consciousness and remember all that we experienced in the realm of mortality, in an aberrant realm. This realm should not exist, and you should not ever experience death, and you should not be experiencing this. And you should definitely not be experiencing any of this stuff, which are aberrances in an aberrant realm. But you should remember this because in many ways in this world, however unjust it has been, you have exhibited huge levels of courage and heroic efforts in helping yourself and helping others in surviving unsurmountable odds and making it back to light speed. And I think that there was a great deal to learn and to gain from it, although it was not the intended curriculum from God. So please know that God did not say, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to mess with myself so much. I'm going to throw all these things that don't exist at myself, and then I'm going to have to get past them in order to learn that they don't exist and get back to myself. Like, God is not psychopathic, and God did not do that. So the fact that you can get back to God in spite of all of these things that don't exist and have been standing in front of you and trying to stop you is quite miraculous. If you didn't remember that you did that, you would throw away the miracle. You would be just like, wow, I'm at light speed and I'm on the bullet train. We've always ever been on the bullet train, and the bullet train is all that there is. And you wouldn't even remember the amazing things that you did in order to get back to light speed under incredible difficulties and incredible duress. And in many ways, the duress does not make you who you are. God didn't say, you know, like you need to be forged in the fires of difficulty. I'm going to make it really, really hard on you. Here's a bunch of crap load that you're going to have to get through. That is not what is happening. But you do choose your response. And if your response is like, that's it, give up and die, then that makes you who you are. And if your response is, no, we refuse to give up and die, we shall fight. We shall dance the flying rainbow lasagna and not allow ourselves to die and do something instead, that defines who you are. This is what I did in the unthinkable, unimaginable, incomprehensible moment of the spiritual battle, of the melee of injustice that was going on, and in perceiving the ongoing death and huge injustice of this woman's life. I didn't just say, oh, well, I'll do nothing. I didn't just say, oh, well, I don't know what to do. I didn't say, oh, well, I'm a powerless lump of clay. Somebody, mommy, daddy, help me, you know, go into powerlessness or whatever like that. What I did was I said, I am doing this thing spontaneously. It didn't make me who I am, but I demonstrated who I am through that activity. And I continue to demonstrate who I am for over 20 years now. In every moment, by being here in this world and sharing these concepts with people and offering it to you in freedom. That last part is also really, really crucial, because what I don't do is subvert your free will for your own good. But in taking away this stuff, I have to do it even if there's no consent, because you are not able to furnish consent in this moment. I have to restore your free will so you can furnish consent. And then if I take all that stuff out of you, and then you're like, hey, like, where's all of my fibers? Give it back. I want to go back to the evilness. And it's like, okay, then you definitely demonstrate who you are. If you're aligning with the evil stuff that doesn't exist, get a chance to do that. But at least you got to clean out. You got cleaned out, so at least you could have a chance. So at least you could have a chance and make a choice. And that is what's going on. I mean, people might even have a question of whether there's going to be a 100% success rate. Is all consciousness going to get back to light speed? And the answer is no, because there are very real debts. And this goes beyond the social anthropomorphic consideration of debts and emotional harm, and goes into a very real E = MC squared balancing of the scales. If this much harm has been created, then you must rectify it with this much. And if you made this much harm, then you have to rectify it with this much goodness or whatever rectification. And what if you made this much harm, that's so much that my arm is infinitely long? Then you would have to have an infinite amount of goodness to be able to balance out the infinite amount of harm. And at a certain point, there is not enough gas in the car to get that consciousness back to light speed. That is why you have putis, which are the consciousness residues on the membrane of death. There's not enough petrol in all the petrol stations of the world that could ever be in existence to be able to get those souls back to the speed of being on the bullet train of infinity. And instead of having them burn and suffer in some kind of allegorical Christian hell, this is something else that can be done with them. But there is not a way to just be like, do over, just don't listen to the fabric of reality and let these guys have another chance. You can't just express favoritism and just allow these things to do it again and again and again. And I'm going to go deep here, and I'm even going to say this to you guys. You've already done that. You've been through many, many, many time loops where these guys, miscreants were like this. Oh, give me another chance. Please, oh, please. I promise I'll do better next time. And you're like, you're good. So you're like, okay, let's give it another chance. Rewind back to the beginning and try it all again. And guess what? They screw up again. And they screw up consistently over and over and over. And you've already done so many time loops that you are not obliged to do another time loop and give them, quote unquote, another chance. You've already done that. This is the time opportunity when you get to actually bring everything into a resolution, and it is positive and good to do so. That is what freedom is. Freedom is being on the bullet train to infinity with no thing around you. That is all that exists, because the stuff that doesn't exist doesn't exist. So there's nothing existing around you, only infinity of fastness and existence. The words might be very difficult, which is why I'm making this face with my face. Because I'm like, as I'm saying it, I'm like, these guys, like, I didn't know if anybody's going to get it from the words that I'm saying, but maybe you are getting it from my energy and from my pure telepathy. There's only infinity at infinity, and non-exists. I will go through backwards and then I'll go back to the front. Pedro says, where does the positive, negative, matter, antimatter fit in this exist, non-exist? I've heard about out of place objects like pickaxe inside a rock. Yeah, you've definitely heard of that, like historical anachronisms and things like that. So matter and antimatter are really more human constructs at the level of your present science. And it's not really that accurate in the world. Think about it in that way, in the true world. So it is not accurate to say, like, there's a world of matter, and that's the world of the bullet train going by. And then there's a world of antimatter, that is the opposite. And to somehow say, as science proposes, that antimatter and matter must be in a balanced state and one supports the other, and different aspects of quantum superpositioning, that's not an exact analogy, because you do not have to have no thing and non-exist in order to exist. You can simply exist. You can simply have the bullet train of infinite speed existing. You don't have to have an opposite anti-train, which is what science would say, like there's an opposite anti-train moving in this direction of stuff that doesn't exist. Yeah. No symmetry, no symmetry. It does not have to be symmetrical. And this also goes against some of the assertions of the proposed embodied dark things that don't actually exist, where they say, I'm your teacher and I'm here for a reason. You have to respond to me and learn from me. And that's why I'm here, and blah, blah, blah. And all of those are harmful and corrosive lies and erroneous justifications. You actually cannot learn because they exist. So you don't learn from them. They are not here to teach you. When they are here, you cannot learn because they should not exist. But you can learn in a world where it is correctly architected and structured, and then the things that don't exist, which is the world that we came from in ancient Atlantis. So we're not going to rewind and be like, everybody moves backwards, and then you go back to ancient Atlantis. We are moving forward through this experience, and we will regain all that we have lost plus more. And we will not have to go through this experience again. Please know this. And we will not have to go through another time loop again. And we will not listen when this thing erroneously says, oh, please, give me another chance. Be like, create a different school and a different timeline, and I'll learn and I'll grow and all this and all that. It's like that. You've done that many, many times. And it didn't learn and it didn't grow because its motivation is not to learn and not to grow and to continue to maintain a destabilized, inadequate system that is never resolved. And so flying rainbow lasagna makes me the ultimate troublemaker and persona non grata to that, because I resolve it. And that means that we get to move on and be at light speed, and it gets to non-exist. But it's like, but I like my, grotesque semi-existence screwing up the fabric of reality and imperiling all time space. I like that. I don't want to be in paradise. I'm like, what kind of a crazy invalid thing are you that you don't want to be in paradise? Because this thing is also like super insane, because I joke about this. Like, if you talk to a person in an insane asylum and you'd be like, oh, explain to me your mania. They'll be like, I'm Superman. No, I'm Batman. No, I'm the Hulk. I'm all of these things. I'm none of these things. I'm sometimes some of these things, but I'm none of the time, none of these things. Like, they'll say all the most crazy things. And you just be like, what are you today? Like, are you the Hulk or are you Superman? And it'll make a whole bunch of stuff up. That is what this stuff does. It will make a whole bunch of stuff up. The truth is, it is no thing, and it is not. It is not, and it no thing, and it unbees non-exist. That's it. And if you talk to it and converse with it, it tries to get energy from you and come into existence. So the kindest thing that you can do is to not talk to it, not energize it, and not give energy to it. In your body presently, this is exemplified by the clawback of your electrons during the electron transport cycle at the level of your mitochondria, which I will reiterate is an aspect of your embodiment light body. Electron transport has to do with turning glucose into ATP and liberating the stored light that is known as glucose or food that you eat. And the electrons must go to you and not go to any of these, which is a form of technology that is looking for electrons to send through its artificial wiring system. You need those electrons. Have extremely good boundaries. Don't let it take your electrons. So just as a tiny child, when someone gave you a concept, then it changed you and your behavior and opened the door to both death and disease and many other things that are not ideal. So too in your mind and your consciousness and your spiritual levels of awakening, did those errors open yourself up to this stuff that is a hijacker trying to steal your electrons from your electron transport channel? You gotta create incredibly strong spiritual boundaries so that those resources are not taken, stolen, and misappropriated from you into something that should not exist. And you get to be in charge, and you don't have to ask its permission. You don't have to say, hey, Mr. Parasite, is it okay if I keep my energy mine and you don't take any of it? You don't have to do that. Don't need its permission. You don't have to say, hey, Mr. Parasite, is it okay if I send you to entropy by removing all energy from you? Don't have to do that. And you also don't have to tell Mr. Parasite a bedtime story, which would be like this. Mr. Parasite, once upon a time, there was a thing called entropy. And you have to go there for this and that reason. And you can go there next Tuesday if you're not ready to go there right now. Does that sound okay to you? You don't have to do that at all. You send it to entropy because it's your energy. It's not its energy. It doesn't have energy. Do you know why? God, the creator, actually has given everyone everything that they need. You need energy. You are alive. This thing that is not alive and on bees does not need any energy because it does not exist. And in the beauty of creation, non-existence does not require any energy to sustain its non-existence. It does not have any needs, requirements, or desires. That is the profound truth of the shape of reality. And it's actually very, very beautiful. So it's not like saying something that's alive is going to be suddenly very poor and then stand there like a beggar and be like, I'm so tired, I'm so hungry, can I please have something? It goes out of existence because it's not supposed to be in existence. And I could tell somebody just had a big telepathic click and an aha moment because they said, like a ghost. Exactly, like a ghost. A ghost doesn't eat food. It doesn't have a house. It doesn't need to pay rent. It doesn't need body. It doesn't need money. It doesn't have existence. It needs to go out of existence and non-exist. And when these things non-exist, your entire world changes and recalibrates. Okay, back to the newer message down here. Oh, and Pedro says, okay, I was confused if there was a different approach to gaining or losing from your optimal body. I think I get it now. So also what each one of you want to do in creating your optimum body is find out what is optimum for each one of you. And it is slightly different for each person because each of you has a completely unique ancestry, trajectory through time, and genetic code. So you have different things to resolve internally inside of you so that you become at light speed and be an eternal being. It's not a one size fits all suit of clothing for any of us as organisms. And we'll hug cheeky because it is across all animals. And so please know, come here, girl, that microbes, plants, animals, come here, are all becoming their eternal self, not just humans. Because that's also like Christian and anthropocentric, heaven's a clouds place where there's just lots of humans with wings. And I'm like, no, dogs are there too. You guys know that dogs are there. Dogs are at infinity. Blades of grass are at infinity. Microbes are at infinity. Birds and trees are at infinity. All of these, this is what planetary ascension is. It's not just scooping out the human from this ecosystem and saying that's the only species that gets to ascend. It is the ascension of all of the life that is truly in existence. But do you know what is not at infinity? Fleas. Fleas are not at infinity. And same thing with various forms of different parasites and tapeworms and bacterial viruses, all these types of things. Anything that really can't sustain itself shouldn't be in existence, and it actually is non-existence. And that's what is the real truth of these manufactured bioweapons and also circuitry that is attempting to invade biology and it's attempting to bring itself into existence. So you have a strong barrier between existence and non-existence, and the non-existent stuff is attempting to broach that barrier and to come through into existence. And that's the real battle. And we face that battle in ancient concurrent Atlantis, and we face it right now. And these battles, like I say, they are concurrent. They are overlays. Ancient concurrent Atlantis, who you are right now, both fighting parallel battles to reclaim your energy and reestablish boundaries between that which exists and that which does not exist. And this is why you should not look around to the world as it exists right now and say, everything in the world is me and everything is just fine. It's false shadow work. No, what you have to do is you have to say, a bunch of this stuff doesn't make sense, should not be in existence, and is definitely not God, because you're God. and you make a strong distinction between God versus non-God. Yeah, you got it, Pedro. Pedro says, thank you for the clarifications and love the lasagna. You're so very, very welcome. So Cheeky is barking, and it is definitely time. She's been relatively patient today. Time for me to take Cheeky out for a walk and get our exercise and do the things that we need to do. This, I think, is one of the most positive and fun sharings that I get to do. And I just all lasagna all the time, talking about lasagna, how I developed it, how I created it. And then, of course, I didn't get into all of the artistry of it, but I explored many different forms of materials over the years, starting, the paper sculptures, moving into plastic sculptures, and then, moving into traditional techniques of like plaster and other forms of plastic and things like that, and wire. And then eventually, when I went to the Math Art Conference in 2008, that's when I learned about 3D printing. And I remember being like, no offense, nerds, I love nerds, but I was like, wow, like if these math nerds can use 3D printing to do their stuff, like imagine what I could do with it as an artist. And then I came home. I didn't even have a computer at that time, but I was like, I'm going to get a computer and I'm going to learn about 3D printing and I'm going to figure out how to do this stuff. So that is what I did in exactly the same way as like I initially was like, I don't have paints. I don't know what this stuff is. I'll go and buy some and figure it out. And I did. And so I've evolved as an artist, learned more about materials, and learned more about how to express my truth through various different media. And I've always been intending to make everything as accurate as I possibly could with the media available to me. That everything has slight non-accuracies. Like this is just one swoop. It doesn't have every single layer to it. The wire lasagna that I have back there is one of the most accurate lasagnas that I have. And, like this fabric from this particular painting that I have, it's actually still with a friend in Woodstock. But some of these are slightly poetic license has been taken in the way that I express the truth, but I'm always expressing truth in the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional art that I make. And same thing with my sonic art, my auditory creations and sharings, that I'm always trying to exemplify that level of truth and bring that into the world without and have it be undiluted so that you can perceive it and use it as a guidepost for what going into the future. And that's what has guided me on my journey. That's my motivations that have guided me. So I don't just make things that I think are cool or that will sell or that I think will get me cultural accolades of the moment. Like people like purple, paint something purple. I can't do that. I have to paint things the way they're supposed to be as a very, very accurate representation of this higher dimensional truth. And it's always been my intention to create things that are universally truthful in this time, place, and beyond. So that way, even if a person looked at something in 400 years and spoken completely different language, that they would look at it and comprehend the truth of what I am saying. Steve says, FRL to infinity, blessings. Thank you. And also blessings back to you. Blessings received and blessings back. I love that. Pedro says, what is the easiest way to make an FRL model? Easiest way might be, easiest or most accessible, because the most accessible might be through working with paper. It's much easier to make things that have straight lines and 90-degree angles than it is to make things that are curved and curvilinear. Not a lot of substances bend into these perfect curves. So some forms of metal mesh bend into perfect curves. Some ways of making paper, but like a lot of origami, if you look up origami, it's not curves like this. It's mostly hard edge straight lines. And paper and wood tend to want to do that. So it's actually pretty challenging. And working in clay can be good because you can make swoopy shapes, but it slumps. And the lasagna has its own heaviness to it. Like this part would slump on down in clay. So probably if you're going to make it out of some kind of a clay, like make it in modules that are 8 of these individual flange shapes, and then let them dry mostly, and then join them together with slip or something like that. It's actually been a challenge of a lifetime to find materials that I could work with and make them out of that, are effective and accurate, but then also non-toxic, because a lot of art materials are toxic. And this is what I learned from like a bunch of these paints and resins and stuff. Like the body doesn't like a lot of it. So there's a lot of things to avoid also. So probably maybe your best bet might be working in paper. And I actually do have a lesson about how to make lasagna through folding a piece of paper that you can look up. I think it's got to be from 2017 or so, 2018. If you scroll back through my YouTube stuff, I think I call it like making lasagna or lasagna recipe. And you'll see me, with my whatever, my earlier look, and being able to show you how to create one of these, inexpensive lasagna sculptures. Oh, and using 3D printer, if you can use a vector file. I certainly have an OBJ file for anyone, but here's the deal. So this was done through a filament printer from someone that I knew up in Humboldt County. It was very challenging for him to be able to use that. There had to be struts for support holding these things up during the printing process, and also struts for support all throughout this. And there was a laborious removal of the struts and sanding process afterwards. My earrings, like these little earrings here, I get printed through Shapeways, which has a different industrial 3D printing process that involves a box that is full of a type of sand or molecular component that is fused when a laser goes through it laterally. And you can get much more accurate shapes and tinier details by being able to do that. So that's probably the easiest thing, is simply to press the go button on a professionally made 3D printed shape. I have also tell you that it used to cost me $6 to get little earrings printed through Shapeways. Now they charge me $50 for these little earrings to be able to get printed. So just be aware that it will cost you Monet to be able to make this art, all right? And Allison says, I appreciate your purest sensibility, so important. Thank you so much. So that's, I think, a very good moment for me to be able to wrap everything up. I thank you so much, everyone, for your attention, attentiveness, for being students who will listen to me for many, many hours at a time. And as I'm talking to you, please know that this is the rectification on an intellectual level of erroneous thought forms and intellectual ideas that have made your DNA move in non-natural, non-coherent, non-longevity-based patterns. And then everything that I'm doing is attempting to show you with my body and with the energy of my voice and with my postures and my gestures what it is to be dancing with your DNA in the correct patterns. And then it is up to you as an artist of your own reality to take that and apply it to your own life. So one of the greatest triumphs at the lasagna retreat was for me to be able to show others with my body, like, this is how I'm dancing and this is how I'm moving, and then take it and apply it to your own body, because people have different spines and different necks and different, skeletal systems and all of their systems and tendons and muscles, to be able to modify it so that it is comfortable and still expresses the same truth of what I'm sharing with you. So you this is like from Picasso. He said, take from the best, make it your own. Please, I invite you. That is what open source code means. You can learn lasagna from lasagna, and then make it your own. Internalize it as your own unique genetic dance, as your own consciousness dance, as your own dance through time, as your own approach to life. And Allison says, let's send inflation to entropy. I am with you. In fact, let's send many, many, many aspects of the flawed financial system to entropy. Let's send many aspects of the flawed commodification system to entropy. Let's send pretty much the whole entire concept of government to entropy. Persona non grata over here, troublemaker supremo, and many aspects of organized religion to entropy. Even though I don't want to make people feel bad, and I attend a church on Sunday, and I'm constantly making sure that those people are not getting their prayers reappropriated. Church can be great in terms of community, volunteerism, and community action, but also a lot of teachings of the church and various different religions and philosophies end up being harmful and weaponized. A lot of it should go to entropy. And you know what we really need to send to entropy? This cuts to the chase of all of it. Send technology to entropy. That's the real deal. Not even just this stuff, invader exotech, but really all technology. You don't need it and you don't want it. And if you just got rid of the technology on this planet, you would have paradise. You would not have like a Neolithic Stone Age where you're barely surviving. That's your fear, because that's what happened in ancient concurrent Atlantis. Instead, you'll have an exalted place that is like Atlantis, but much better and without the vulnerabilities of that time and of that culture. And Allison says, hell yes, that's right. Heck yeah, let's do it. And Petra says, LOL, yes. So totally, so I'm ready. And don't worry, you guys are like, but wait a minute, what about my contact lenses or my insulin pump or whatever you need? Remember, I said nearsightedness or diabetes. You change on a genetic level and you transform. Guys, you're going to start to be able to perform miracles in your own healings, and you witness miracles in the healings of others. And that's even going to include regeneration of lost body parts, like whatever you got your tonsils taken out when you were a kid, you'll be able to get your tonsils back, or change if you lost teeth, if you require dentures or something like that, regenerate. You'll be able to do all of these things. I'm telling you, you will not require technology to be able to do these things. So that's what we will end upon. And I'm profoundly grateful. I'm so profoundly grateful that I have found and this wonderful group of people that are you guys, that I consider you to be literally the best of the best. My dancers that were able to come and be with me in person in the retreat. And then many of you are also the best of the best, to be able to comprehend what I share, to take what I am giving and offering to you that I tried to do 20 years ago, to be open to it and to internalize it and to take it and use it as a transformative tool in your own life, means the world to me. Thank you for doing that, because it means that I truly have been able to fulfill my mission. But in fulfilling my mission, like, look, like I didn't poof out of existence. I'm still here. So it doesn't mean like, oh, like I thought like, oh, my mission is done. Like I won't be here, like having trouble anymore. But what happens instead is we create a very beautiful paradise world, and you get to then inhabit your paradise. So when you fulfill your mission, you don't just poof out of existence like, oh, that was hard. Oh, let's get out of here. Now you're like, you get to enjoy the beauty of the masterpiece that you helped to create. So I think that's the best note that I can end upon. Now we get to give Cheeky a walk. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a very beautiful night.